Okay.
Yeah, Jeff, we're ready.
We're ready.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, members of the commission, we are reconvening our December the 1st, 2020 meeting. We have a number of items that still are left to be debated and dealt with. At the recess of our December the 1st meeting, there were a number of items that we simply did not get an opportunity to address. And so as we invite the public back to be a part of today's meeting, and we do the business of the people, Chair recognizes Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. Our next item would be under our recognition portion of the agenda, item D, commendation for the Richmond County Board of Elections. Move for vote of commendation from the Richmond County Board of Election, Executive Director, staff, and board members. Commissioner Sias.
Mr. Sias.
Thank you, sir. One of the things that I thought was very important that happened this year, in the year 2020, we had a tremendous election under the conditions of a very dangerous pandemic. Our Board of Elections, our Executive Director, Ms. Lynn Bell, and her staff did an outstanding and tremendous job to provide the city of Augusta, Richmond County, a risk-free election. We had a record number of turnout of folks to come out for this election under these conditions. It has been extremely troubling to hear our state officials and national officials say that this election had rigged, had irregularities and all these things, when our folks put themselves at risk to have an election that was transparent and free. One of the things that concerns me as well was the fact that one time we was paying our election officials hazard pay, and they did a super job, put their lives at risk to get a fair and proper election, and for these folks to be disparaged. One, I must commend our attorney, our Secretary of State for standing his ground, because with the state office and the local county offices, they all work well together. Georgia had a great election. And so for us to see our officials disparage these people and all the work that they done, that's just extremely unfair. So what I would like and request that this body do is that we recognize our Board of Election with either a resolution of commendation or a vote of commendation for all the work that they did to get our election ready to have a good election, and also preparing for a runoff, which begins on next week. So these folks have worked extremely hard, and they should be recognized for their work and not disparaged. So with that, I ask that we either do a resolution of support or a resolution of commendation for these folks, and that's a motion.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Voting.
That would be for a resolution of commendation.
Okay, just a minute. I'm sorry, Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Fenoy. Now, Mr. Franham,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Son,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Dennis, you're muted.
Mr. Marion Williams.
Yes.
Okay, can we go back to Mr. Dennis Williams? Is he unmuted?
He's off screen now, Madam Clerk.
Okay, that motion carries with Mr. Fenoy and Mr. Dennis Williams out.
So let me share with the members of the commission. I was informed on late yesterday afternoon by the commissioner from the first that his sister-in-law passed away, which very well be the reason why he's not with us in attendance on today, but his sister-in-law passed away.
Mr. Mayor, can I point a person privilege, please?
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, and to my colleagues, last week in our heated discussion in our executive session, I made what I believe to be an inappropriate comment to my colleague, Commissioner Dennis Williams, and I called him the next day and I apologized to him, and I asked him if he didn't mind, I would do it publicly. That public would have been back in our executive session. We've had it. We would have had one. Of course, we don't have one, but I do want to just let him know I apologize for the comments I made to him last week, and I just wanted to follow through on what I shared with him. Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, you want your point of personal privilege now?
Sure. I'd like to thank Dr. Malik for allowing his staff, Ms. Della Pope, who worked with us entirely to put on the slideshow for the recognition of our outgoing members of the commission. I'd also like to thank, of course, Mr. Lewis, along with Reggie Horn and Ms. Allen for her staff, and Michelle Perman. She also contributed to what I think was an outstanding presentation for members of our outgoing commission. So again, I'd like to thank Dwella Pope, Dr. Malik, Ms. Allen, Mr. Lewis, Mr. Reggie Horn, as well as Ms. Michelle Perman for assisting us with that task. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and I think it's noteworthy that we recognize you for making that possible on last week as well. Thank you for your effort.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe that brings us to the matter of consent. No, I'm sorry, we've got some more recognitions.
Okay. That would be item E, November years of service recipients.
Yes. All right. Ms. McFarley, I believe do we have someone from HR? Ms. McFarley, do we have someone from HR who's going to do the years of service?
No, sir, no one's in the chamber from HR.
Okay. All right. So, Madam Clerk,
Yes.
I guess it's appropriate for us to at least call their names.
I was hoping that the HR employee relation manager was going to handle that portion of the presentation.
I don't see them.
They're not, okay.
Yeah.
Well, if we could, sir, if we could just.
We'll come back to it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll come back to it.
Okay.
I'm on that.
All right, Administrator Donald, if you would touch base with our HR staff so that they
We
can
are,
come
yes, sir.
back.
They're logging on now.
Okay.
Well, sure. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Madam Clerk, as they're logging on, let's try to move some stuff forward. We'll come back to that item.
Okay. So we did the,
Ms. Everett is going to be in January.
yes, sir.
So
Mayor, they are logging on, but they're having some issues right now. I'm actually have IT in here with me as well. So if they can't get on in the next minute or so, I'm gonna just have them come upstairs and do it from here.
Yeah, that's not a problem. We're gonna move on and then we'll come back to recognitions. We can do that. We'll give everybody time to get their technology in place and then we'll go from there, but we'll continue moving forward in the meeting, okay? All right, Madam Clerk, this brings us to our consent agenda items.
Yes, sir, which is item 1.
Okay. And I think it's appropriate for us to consider any items for the consent agenda that are currently on the regular agenda.
Keep in mind, items 3 and 7 has already been disposed of at.
That is correct.
And 8.
At 8, yes.
And 7, man. I thought it was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yeah.
all of those have been addressed. All right, Commissioner from the 8th.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to consent item 20, 21, 22, and 23, as well as 26, 27.
Just a minute. Okay.
All right, we're writing them down, Madam Clerk. We'll come right back to it.
No, I'm not gonna do that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that now. Yeah,
All
I
right.
ain't got no problem with some of those trying to consent, but he need to slow it down so we can catch it. We might well not have no extended meeting if we're gonna do that.
So,
So-
sorry, Marion. I've had too
Yeah.
much coffee, so I'm talking
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah, you slow it down, slow your roll.
So you stopped at 26, sir?
So Commissioner
And
from the
27.
8th, Commissioner from the 8th, would you start over, please?
Yes, sir. 20, 21, 22, 23, 26, and 27.
Commissioner from the 4th. Commissioner from the 4th, you're muted.
All right, thank you. Finally got my clicker going. I'd like to request consent for item 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Thank you.
I got a problem with 14 and 15. I need to get some understanding about 14 and 15. They can be companions.
All right, not a problem at all. We got it. All right, 14 and 15, there's objection. Okay, Commissioner from the 6th.
No, I haven't had them, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can you offer item number 35 on the pension committee? That resolution,
Yes.
GMA meeting that.
Yes.
Yeah, can I get another bite at the apple?
You mind if I take a slice?
No, sir.
33 and 34.
Yeah,
Who was that, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem? You,
yeah.
and what was that again?
32,
33 and
34.
33, 34.
Okay.
30.
Actually, I have a question. I have a question about 33.
All right, so 33, no. 30, item 30, Madam Clerk, item 31. Item number 29. Item number 28.
About 28 as well.
Yeah,
You
I
have
just
a
said
question?
that, yeah. Item number 28 and item number 26 and 27.
26 is on.
And 27.
27 is on.
27.
It's on.
27 is on? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So what was the question on 28? That was objection to 28?
No.
Mr. Garrett. Oh. Yeah,
No,
Mr. Garrett.
there was no objection to 28.
There was,
Oh, there
actually
was?
20,
Okay.
but we can take 28 and 33 together when we come to them. The question's the same for both.
All right, sounds good.
Mayor, I do have one. I apologize.
Sure.
Item number 40.
Objection.
Mr. Sias.
Yes, ma'am.
Item number 36, the Board of Health appointment. They're replacing Dr. Blackwood, who resigned, and they're asking that Dr. Keenerman be appointed to that unexpired term.
Yes,
Are you
ma'am. I
familiar
request
with that?
consent for that. Request consent for that. 36.
Can we add
And
24?
last week, number 39, that's conversation about moving that to the consent agenda as well. That's item number 39.
Can we add 24, Mayor?
Sure.
Mr. Mayor.
Everybody hold on. Just hold on. All right, Commissioner from the 5th.
Yeah, you know, we've already given them the money. If somebody objects to it, can Ms. Bonner just write it down or something? 40 is ratifying the $25,000 we've already given them. We've already given them the check. Could they just say, I don't like it or something, and we keep moving on that one?
Well, you're right. You can vote for the consent agenda if it's added and signify your objection by voting no on that particular item.
Did we give them money without it being approved or voted on?
They already have the money, John.
There was a letter circulated where there were 6 signatures authorizing the expenditure to be ratified at the commission next meeting.
It's not a rule game. That's not a rule.
Can you send us that email again?
Yeah, please.
Which one? The one
The
showing
one
the
you just,
signatures
yes, ma'am.
and the one asking you to support it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sure, we'll do.
And how much money was given to them?
25,000.
Mr. Mayor.
The lady from the 3rd, go ahead.
Concerning that agenda item that was ratified, because I wasn't aware either that it was for sure approved by 6 votes. Did we put any asks of any kind of budget or any kind of paperwork after the expenditures with that gift of 25,000? I'm just curious. Or is it just an outright gift and we don't have to have any paperwork or any accountability with it? I don't know who that question goes to. Maybe the administrator?
I'm not sure who that question goes to either.
So we'll follow up with finance to get you a final answer on that. But anytime the city provides funding to an initiative, we will request some general information. In this case, it wouldn't be so much around the actual expenditures, but the outcomes related to the count.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, can I just
Continue.
follow up?
Yes, please.
All right, thanks, Administrator. I just know when we do any kind of grants or any monies to nonprofits, we do ask for some kind of an audit type something. I don't know, Ms. Williams would be able to follow up on that, but I'd like to see that, please. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We'll make sure to get you that. And just a note for this one, since it was related to the actual census count, so it would be a specific activity that they would use for marketing, outreach, materials, et cetera. And so we'll get you a follow-up on how those expenditures were or what they did with those expenditures for the count.
Great, thanks so much.
All right, Commissioner from the 9th.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just want to bring it out there. You know, it sounded as if we gave out a gift, it was the work that was done by the census for the hard to count constituency that we have in this city, that they have really worked hard, and I was one of the last ones to support that, but they have worked hard to get the hard to count resident to help our city gain the economic dollar that we should be getting, but if they wasn't counted, we wouldn't be getting. So whether we understand it, whether we like it or not, that's exactly what happened. Now, I'm sure they got some paperwork as to what they done or whatever, but we wouldn't take the time to go out there and knock on them doors and go in those back alleys and those corners and streets. But someone else did, and I'm glad they did. So I just want to make sure that we understand that we didn't just give some money away and don't know where it went or who got it. I mean, I'm the last one to support anything like that. But I just want to make sure that we understand that it wasn't a gift horse that we gave away and he rode out in the sunset. It was what some people did that I'm appreciative of them doing.
Very good, Commissioner. Commissioner from the 8th, State to inquire.
Thank you, Mayor. And I guess the reason that we're asking these questions is I remember the email going around asking for support, but as for me, I never saw the responses or a final tally in regards to that. So I'm not sure.
I'll be sending out to you shortly, sir. I apologize if that didn't make it because I was quite frankly still waiting on others to support. But once we received the 6 confirmations, Commissioner Fenoy asked that I proceed, which we did. Commissioner Fenoy, Dennis Williams, Ben Hassan, Marion Williams, Bobby Williams, and Commissioner Sias. So, but I'll get that out to you, sir.
Hey, thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, if you would, for the record, just repeat back to us items that we're consenting today.
Okay. Items 12, 13, 16, 17, 20, 21, 22, 23. There was some discussion on 24. Was that ever a consensus on that one?
Yes.
Okay. 26, 27, 29, 30, 31, 34, 35, 36, 39, 40. And that concludes the consent.
Mayor, I thought I had put
Mr. from the 4th, State to inquire.
Was there objection to 32 being on there? I had that on my list.
No, there was no objection to 32.
And we'll add 32.
Thank you.
I believe 15 was also on that list as well, Madam Clerk.
There was objection to that one, Administrator Donald.
Oh, got it.
Objections to 14 and 15.
Okay.
Commissioner from the 9th.
No, I'm good, Mr. Mayor. Y'all pull enough for me.
No, you objected to 14 and 15. You said you had some questions.
Oh, yeah.
Right. We're not there yet. Hold on. All right, Madam Clerk, I believe that covers it. All right, voted.
So move.
Need a motion, that's right. A second, I need a second.
Second.
Okay. That Mr. Sias and Mr. Garrett.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Clark.
Yes, with objection to 40.
Okay. Ms. Davis.
Madam Clerk, yes, with objection to 40 as well.
Okay. Mr. Fenoy is out. Mr. Franham.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Son,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams. Is he still muted, sir? Mr. Mayor.
He
Yes,
is.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Marion Williams.
Yes, yes.
That motion carries with Mr. Fenoy out, Commissioner Clark and Commissioner Davis voting no on item 40.
Okay. Madam Clerk, let's go from top to bottom for right now.
Okay. That would take us to item number 9. It's an update from Mr. Benish Brown, President, CEO, Augusta Convention and Visitors Bureau on planning for the International Soul Festival.
All right, we're bringing Mr. Brown in now.
That would take us to item number 9.
Mr. Brown.
Update from Mr. Benish Brown, President, CEO, Augusta Convention and Visitors Bureau on planning for the International Soul Festival.
All right, Mr. Brown, if you would for us, take either your YouTube or your web version, and if you'll mute that completely. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. And I did. I actually just closed it out totally. But thank you, Mayor and members of the commission. And I'm here today representing the International Soul Festival Steering Committee. And I do want to specifically thank Commissioner Dennis Williams for spearheading getting this update on the agenda for us. I'm here to assure you that the International Soul Festival is still a very important project. It's included in Destination Blueprint, which is the city's destination development plan that is coordinated here by the CBB. It's also in the city's recreation and parks festival and events plan. And I hate that some snippets came out last week before I could present to you. I thought I would be presenting last week, but I'm here to provide a brief update, starting with the fact that our vision is to create a music, food, and beverage experience that generates attention and attendance. And particularly, we'd like to see it lead to overnight stays here in the city of Augusta. And ultimately, our hope is also that this signature event will bear the name of the legendary Mr. James Brown. The slide in front of you shows that this work has been a partnership with the City of Augusta staff and the CBB staff working together. And we brought others to the table, people with relevant backgrounds and a variety of professional experiences. These are people with history, with people with what I would call long memories, people who speak out, people who question and who challenge, and some with an entrepreneurial outlook that will help bring a very bold and fresh ideas to the table. And with all of this diversity, we created a festival steering committee. The committee will help to find the best path to make this dream and concept a reality. The next slide is a snapshot of some of the work that has been done. The timeline begins with the conversation that was had with the administrator back in September of 2018 to discuss the possibility of this elected body approving some seed funding in the 2019 budget. And I do thank you, sincere thanks to the elected body because the city funded $100,000 as seed money. They approved that in the 2019 budget, and you approved it again for the 2020 budget. So in January of 2019, a group that was what I call the precursor to this current steering committee was pulled together by then the city's Rec and Parks Department director. It was more of a think tank, I would say, to generate ideas of what a planning process should look like. Then in February of last year, we stood up a steering committee. Then we built a framework for proceeding, and the initial target was May of 2020 for an inaugural festival, because we do want this festival to align with the celebration of Mr. Brown's birthday. Between May and October of last year, we began to clarify the vision and the expectations of what a festival would look like. I will tell you that a key sticking point was that we needed to eliminate any financial risk to the city beyond the seed money that's provided. And the CVB is also not in a position to take on any financial risk. It was determined by the committee that we needed to search for and identify a professional vendor to professionally create and manage our International Soul Festival under the committee's oversight. As we continued to meet between October and December of last year, the steering committee reevaluated again the target date for an inaugural event, and we shifted to May of 2021. We had some conversations with a couple of professional management prospects. And then finally, we heard about C4 Live. We heard about them after it was announced that the city was entering an agreement with them to include creating and hosting events and festivals here in Augusta. So we gathered some background information from the Economic Development Authority, and we felt pretty comfortable that maybe we need to have a conversation with C4 Live. Let's explore this concept. So by February of this year, we initiated conversation directly with C4, and both parties are just trying to find a way to get to a proposal that we can bring forward to the steering committee and then to you. This next slide, we challenged ourselves to identify why. Why C4? Why C4? Why should we narrow our focus to C4 Live as the professional entity to help make this festival a reality? And these were some of the key points you see on the slide. Number one, there was already a relationship with the city of Augusta and a commitment to improving a facility that could possibly work as a venue for the festival. Secondly, C4 will also produce an event for the masters, so there's some synergy in having access to their staging and some of the other infrastructure that they would keep up a few weeks longer to host the International Soul Festival in May. And then finally, there is a willingness to explore a business model that eliminates financial risk to the city and the CVB, but also at the same time initiates and grow a festival that has the global appeal that we really want it to have. And we informally call the framework the crawl, walk, and run scenario, as we seek to create something that will be sustainable. This has to last. Slide 5, next slide. Just to share that C4 does have experience, and obviously you explored their background, you know a lot of this. They have experience in what they call delivering best-in-class customer and brand experiences. And that ranges from Super Bowl concert series and a lot of the major destinations where Super Bowls have been held to a variety of festivals and events throughout Las Vegas. The next slide, again, just loops back to speak to the possibility of a seamless access to their existing event footprint. This is just a rendering showing how they could set up or would set up Lake Olmstead Stadium for their Masters event. And then this last slide, this is the last slide, is just reminding us it is a new day, but we continue this journey towards an International Soul Festival. In reality, it's anybody's guess about the short term or even the lasting impact that the pandemic is going to have on large gatherings, or even the impact the pandemic might have on the appetite of performers to travel and perform before live audiences. But we're still interested in getting a proposal from C4, bring it again to the steering committee, and then forward it on to you. We need a plan that confirms who will bear the financial risks, but also clarifies ownership of the festival. We are projecting that the $200,000 in seed funding from the city will be only a small part of a total budget that it might take to host an event of the caliber that we envision. So we're still trying to flesh out those numbers, and they will come forward as part of the proposal. We're also reevaluating, obviously, a reasonable time frame, and we can tell you that it won't be in May of 2021. Finally, we're trying to determine what success looks like. So even the Destination Blueprint Plan and the Recs and Parks Festival and Events Plan recommends the development of a 5-year plan, because we need to understand that the first several years of an event might generate lesser attendance levels than we'd like it to ultimately generate. But as the event matures and expands, we expect attendance to grow. That's why, again, we call it crawl, walk, and run. So in ending, mayors, commissioners, we know that this effort is still alive, want you to know it's still alive, and we're going to make sure to keep you informed of the work we're doing, ultimately, again, to the point of where we do have a formal proposal to bring forward to you. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for your support and your interest. I don't know if there are any questions you might have for me, Mayor or commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. We really appreciate your presentation. We've got a commissioner from the 9th with a question. Commissioner from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Appreciate the comments and your report. Very good. You said crawl, walk, and run. And you also said that you didn't see anything for 2021. If we're crawling, wouldn't it be possible to do something in 21? Maybe not on a large scale, but to get moving. And I agree, it's going to take time. Probably take, like you said, 5 years to get it up and going like it probably should be. But is there any plans or any effort being put on doing something of a small magnitude? We have done something here before. And the reason I'm saying that, Ben, is because, you know, Augusta been hurry up and wait. I mean, you got to strike the match somewhere. You got to get started at some time. So I'm hoping that your group have some initiative to get something started. If the pandemic now, if it's allowed, if the pandemic is such of area that we can't do something, is there any conversation been talked about that? I guess that's my question.
Commissioner, that is a great question, and you're exactly right. And we will lean on both our own research and on C4's background. I think the big issue is going to be what will be allowed considering the pandemic. I think a lot of research is saying we won't see a lot of comfort out of consumers until probably the second half of the year. But it doesn't mean it's not something we can continue to talk about. We've been talking about that for a while. I'll just throw this in too. You know, we're certainly looking at, we've got some good examples we can keep an eye on. The Masters will happen in April. We're kind of trying to keep our ears to the ground on how some of that planning will take place for this year. This year, I think, is just going to be, 2020. 2021 is a question mark. But I will just say, we will certainly keep talking about that.
Well, the mayor and the commissioner approved the James Brown Trail from James Brown Boulevard, from Reynolds all the way up to Lane and Walker, and from 8th Street back down. And we have not done anything yet except call it a trail. We looked at the Penny Saving Bank, which is on the corner of Lane and Walker and James Brown. Commissioner Hassan and myself and maybe a couple other commissioners probably went by there and looked at that building and, you know, proposing doing something to get a start. I mean, I mentioned about striking a match. And, you know, a match is something you probably light a cigarette with, you know, but it's very small. But once it spreads, once it grows, but if you don't ever strike that match, you know, we want to get in place. But just want to tell you, I appreciate what you brought to us today. I think that you're going to continue to work on it. I think we'll be able to see the economic effect of it down the road. Now, if this pandemic let us, I think we have been missing the mark a long time on not just Augusta Nights, but what James Brown name would do for our city if we market it right. So thank you again. And I want to prolong it. I just want to, you know, let you know that I'm still his #1 fan. I mean,
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
We certainly can hear you and see you. You have a question, sir?
Yeah, I'm on my small phone, but I need to get back on my iPad if they can get me some help. But I just want to say, I have a question for Mr. Bennett.
Sure.
You said, I think there's another event that they have in May as well. I think May is James Brown's birthday time frame, right?
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner.
And there was another event that was up there as well. I can't know whether that event is going to continue. I can't seem to think of the name. It was up about a couple of years ago now. It was the latter part of May.
Bash. I think it's the birthday.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a James Brown event. It was another event that was at Lake Olmstead.
Banjo barbecue.
Barbecue, yeah, the barbecue event. Okay. So my question is, are you talking about with C4 potentially at Lake Olmstead as well? Yeah, I haven't ironed that out yet.
Yes, sir. That is the prime location. Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have a plan B in the event that yourself and C4 can't come to terms? Because when you're talking about ownership of the name and everything, and those kinds of things, so you have some other issues. Do you have a plan B? And I'm not asking what today, but do you have a plan B?
Thank you very much. We do have some other entities we have had some initial conversations with. We're going to have to start probably a little bit farther back in the discussion with them than we have with C4, but we do have some other options.
Well, okay. But one thing I just want to make mention to you, I know C4 has a certain amount of days.
All right, Mr. Brown, thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you so much, and we will keep you posted.
All right, thank you. Okay. Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Madam Clerk, I'm going to bring in Anita Rooker to do the recognitions for the employee years of service at this time, and then we'll come back to the rest of the items on our agenda. Okay?
Okay. All right.
I can't hear anyone.
We can hear you, Ms. Rooker.
Ms. Rooker, we can hear you.
Okay.
We're ready.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commission, Administrator, and Madam Clerk. Today, it gives me an esteemed pleasure to recognize our employees for years of service. Today, we recognize a total of 90 years of service and institutional knowledge for the city of Augusta. We have 3 recipients today. Mr. Randall Key, 25 years with the Augusta Fire Department. Mr. Ronald Sylvester, 30 years with the Sheriff's Department. And Gerald Wall, 35 years with Augusta Utilities. So on behalf of the City of Augusta and the HR department, congratulations to those recipients.
Thank you, Ms. Rooker. To our recipients we want to recognize each of you and say unequivocally, thank you for your commitment to the city of Augusta and her residents, and what you do as a member of our team here in the city of Augusta. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rooker.
Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Okay, I believe that items 10 and 11 are ready now.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Ms. Duran is in the public space. Are we going to do those companion, I assume, right?
We are.
Okay. Item 10 is a motion to approve a request from the Augusta's Public Art Agency, Greater Augusta Arts Council, the terms and conditions of the sculpture trail contracts. And item 11 is an update from Ms. Durant regarding the sculpture trail and sculptures for the Sculpture Trail Festival. And I think Administrator Donald sent out some additional information to us this morning regarding that.
Is that correct?
Yes, I did, Mayor. It was just very simple information to help supplement and make it a little easier. I think you had already discussed these two items before. The one item that the commission did want to look at is that the city is taking on the liability for the sculptures, and so it's not an issue. Finance is prepared to do so. Us being self-insured, we did not take out additional insurance, but the total value of these sculptures is a little bit under $300,000. And so we have cataloged that. I provided you some details into the list and estimated cost of the structures, and just gave you some history of how we got here. So I think, staff recommendation would be approval and just providing that insight to the commission.
All right, thank you. Ms. Durant.
So I do have a short slide presentation. I am talking today about the Augusta Sculpture Trail, again, a project with Recreation and Parks that's been over 2 years in the works. We started with Glenn Parker, moved over to Ron Hawk, and are finishing the project with Maurice McDowell. So in mid-January, we'll be installing 10 temporary sculptures in downtown Augusta, centered on the Augusta Common, Broad Street, and the entrance to Riverwalk on 8th. And if we can open the slide presentation.
Ms. Durant, if you can hold for just a moment, please.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have a slide presentation. Was it sent over to me?
Yes.
Okay, let me check that real quick.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Ms. Durant, if you'll just suspend for a moment, please.
I'd be happy to.
Sure what that noise is.
I apologize, Mr. Durant. You did send it to me, and I do have it. So hang on 1 second. Okay, can you see that?
I can.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you so much. So if you flip to the next slide, great. So this is, again, a project. This is a City of Augusta project, a sculpture trail. You have signed an MOU with the Greater Augusta Arts Council to manage this project, and we did receive funds from the CBB this year to do some advertising. So you'll see a brochure we developed for the sculpture trail. We'll be installing in mid-January, but we did have to do some of the work in 2020. We did not know, doing a sculpture call, a national call for this work, if we would receive 10 applications from national sculptors, or 20. We hoped we would have a choice, and we were amazed to find that we had 120 artists submit sculptures to lend or rent to the city of Augusta. Your public art panel and many employees of the city of Augusta in various departments helped us manage this jurying process and get it down to the 10 sculptures. Next slide. So we have 10 artists who were chosen. You see the first 5 artists, and these will be placed, I'll show you a map, but again, as I said, these will be downtown, and they will bring life to downtown Augusta. When we were planning a sculpture festival, little did we know that we would be looking in 2020 and 2021 for a pandemic-friendly event, and certainly a sculpture festival fits that bill perfectly. So this, if you pause on the slide, this is the downtown map. It looks busy, but it's because we're placing 10 sculptures downtown in a very concentrated, walkable area. So you can see the 2 on the far right, 9 and 10, they're at the base to the entrance to Riverwalk on 8th Street. We have 4. We discovered that the Augusta Common was built to house sculptures in the 4 corners, and then we have them in Broad Street. And we worked closely with city and traffic and engineering to make sure that we didn't put anything on Broad Street that would distract drivers. So those are our 10 and the 10 locations. And we have a walking map that we've developed in partnership with the Georgia Department of Humanities that people can walk. And we also have a gift from a national company that does maps of public art called AutoCast, and people have an app on their phone. I have the AutoCast app on my phone, and I can actually tour public art in Chattanooga and all over the country. And when you come to Augusta, if you have AutoCast on your phone or you download it, you'll be able to use it to take the tour of the Augusta Sculpture Trail. So it's very exciting. You can take a peek downtown. We already have laid the pads, and we are contracting with the artist. And what we're asking you today is to affirm the contract with the artist. We're working on behalf of the city of Augusta to get this project up and going for mid-January.
Thank you, Mr. Rand.
Yeah.
All right, Chair recognizes the commission from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Durant, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. You said the date is about the contracts, and is the contract, does it differ from the MOU?
The contract that we're talking about is the contract with the artist. Each artist will be paid $3,000 for the loan of their work for the 2 years that it's installed downtown. And so
Okay.
we are asking to attest and affirm that, and that all fits in exactly in the contract, in the MOU budget.
Okay, the MOU and the contract, they have some different numbers there in that regard. One of them has, I'm looking at in the MOU, they're looking at 18 months and a 30% sales commission if the artist sold that would come to the Greater Arts Council. And when you're looking at the contract has a term of exposure, not exposure, but term of exhibition is 24 months, and it's 20% if you come to yourself, it is sold. So which one takes precedence on this?
The contract takes the final. We decided to extend it to an even 24, so it would be up. We wouldn't have to be taking it down during November.
Okay. And so, okay, when it comes, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Were you through? I have another question. Yes, ma'am. And it said the city reserves the right to make all placement decisions and to make emergency repairs if when necessary. So that if someone was destroyed in some form or fashion, then we're responsible by making it back whole, either in a purchasing that piece of property if it cannot be made whole, if it is destroyed.
Filing insurance. It would be filing the insurance for if something was destroyed.
And so we're self-insured. So in essence, as a city, that means that we were owning that piece of sculpture.
Yes, exactly right.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
All right, Commissioner from the 9th. Commissioner from the 9th.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I think that's really nice. I like what I see. My question, I heard Brenda say that it will be maybe rented, maybe renting the sculptures. Now I'm hearing buying. So which sculpture and which way would that go? Would it be we buying it, or we would be renting it? Or we rent it, and if it don't sell, how that work, Brenda?
Right, so for the 2 years, the 10 sculptures that are installed, I use the term rent. We are renting the sculptures from the artist for 2 years, the 10 sculptures that will be downtown. They're being paid $3,000. So just a minor amount, they're getting them here, installing them, and we're paying them $3,000 to thank you for the use for 3 years. All the sculptures are for sale. So the hope is that local businesses might decide to buy a piece and put it, in front of their business, or to donate it to the city. And then also in the agreement, the city will purchase one. And at this point, we don't know which one. We have 2 years for you to make that decision. So the city will end up starting a collection of sculptures from this first sculpture trail. So they'll purchase one at the very end of the 2 years.
Brenda, if you remember last time we had this discussion, I talked about sculptures that was put around, and I think you mentioned that we approved something already. Well, I think Aiken had horses, and some other place had, I think it was Swanee, Georgia, where they had pigs or something out there, and they were big sculptures. How large would they be, and can we decide on something, or can the city decide on something that they want for the sculpture around the city?
So
how large? My first question.
These are about 15 feet tall. Is that right? 10, 15? One, if you go back, whoever's, Jeffrey, running the slideshow, if you want to go back and we can look at the sculptures. Some are quite low, like there's a dragon-looking one that is low to the ground, and go back again. So if you look at the bottom left, that's low. A child could sit on that. The rest vary between maybe 10 to 15 feet tall.
They're all going to be valued the same way. I mean, I know the more material you got, the more work they put into it, but they're all going to be valued the same.
For the rental, for the 2 years, it's interesting to think about. If you choose to be a sculptor for your profession, just like if you're a visual artist, if you're a painter, you don't sell everything that you create. So you have some sculptures that might be in your garage, in your warehouse, in your studio. And so these artists participate in sculpture festivals or trails like ours all over the country. And so they send us a photo of what they have that they want to rent out for 2 years. And that's one way that they make their money. And so, yes, we are paying them $3,000 each for the 10 artists. And then they vary in price. Some are as inexpensive as under $10,000, and some might go up to $50,000. So they vary in price for purchase.
Okay, they vary in price. Okay, that's my question. I just trying to make sure we can afford what we're looking at, what we're getting for what we're buying. When we do, and I don't do art, Brenda, that's your field. But as an elected official, I got enough insight to know that there's a difference, and I want to make sure that we are meeting it. And I'm looking at these pictures here, and when I look at the flowers on the right, left, top up there, and then I look at the lower one you talk about, the children can sit on. Then you got some on a stand. So I know that they're different and uniquely the same, but at the same time uniquely different. But I just want to make sure that we are getting something that's going to fit Augusta. Fit Augusta meaning that we won't just have a sculpture, we'll have something that's signifying Augusta. Does that make sense, Brenda?
It absolutely does. And we made sure as we were jurying that we didn't just jury in art that was above the price that the city had budgeted to buy their first piece from the sculpture trail. And so there are pieces that we can afford to purchase according to our MOU and the budget of the sculpture trail at the end. You mentioned the top left piece, with the pink stalks. That artist actually did this piece in honor of her mother and sister who had breast cancer. And I think it's a lot of times the story of the piece makes you love the piece even more. And as I had a sister who recovered, who beat breast cancer, that piece talked to me as I saw it come through for the jurying process. And I think that a lot of these pieces have a story with them. And sometimes you see art and you like it or you don't like it, and then you hear the story or meet the artist and it changes how you feel about it. But that's an interesting piece, and we were happy with the amount of the strength of our medical community that we had a strong piece that spoke to medicine and recovery.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rand.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, you got one more question. Commissioner from the first, State Inquirer.
Yeah, Mr. Rand, at one time we had sculptures of golfers here at Augusta, and they were damaged and had to be moved to more secure locations. Is there any danger of that happening to the sculptures that we have now?
So I think the first thought in mind is there's always danger of something happening in any city in the United States to things that are out. But we feel that this being in our downtown area, which is populated, traveled, visited, and in plain view, that our sculptures will be very protected that way. And we have found that our public art, our murals, have really remained undamaged in the past, and that's common for public art to be respected by the community. And so we hope that follows through with the sculpture trail.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Rand. All right, Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. Voting.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, Mr. Fenoy,
Yes.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sayers. He's muted.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams. Is
No,
he
ma'am.
out, sir?
No, ma'am.
You voting no? Okay.
No.
Mr. Marion Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries 9-1 with Mr. Dennis Williams voting no.
Mr. from the 10th. Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, we're going to go to item number 43.
Okay. Number 43, motion to approve the Augusta Richmond non-discrimination ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have a number of individuals who have been identified to speak to the proposal today. And I want to thank the members of the commission that we had an opportunity to speak to directly related to this matter. This is an important time for the city of Augusta, and our approach this morning will be the following. I'll share a few words, and then I'm going to call on some individuals to speak to this matter. And then, of course, we can take questions and also hear from the members of the commission as it relates to this. In 2020, this has been an unusual year for all of us. More importantly, in the past several years, our local government and law enforcement has been engaged in these matters as it relates to discrimination and worked very diligently to try to move our city forward. With all of the challenges that we've seen in 2020, notwithstanding the global health pandemic, but the issues of racial injustice, social protest, they bring us to this most opportune moment for us to have this conversation. Here in the city of Augusta, the Sheriff's Department, the largest full-service sheriff's agency in the state of Georgia, in fact, has appointed an LGBTQ liaison. Our own municipal government took broad steps to appoint a local liaison as well. In 2015, as a city, we became an MBK city, my brother's keeper city. And in the coming days, we're hoping to announce another initiative that will help us to address the uptick in gun violence that we've experienced this year alone. And in 2018, the Augusta Commission saw fit to unanimously pass an expansion of its internal non-discrimination protections for municipal employees. With all of the work that has been done thus far, there's still more work to be done. That was made blatantly obvious to us with the most recent HRC Human Rights Campaign Municipal Equality Index rating of 28 out of 100 for the city of Augusta. There are cities all across this nation that are scored annually by the Human Rights Campaign. And again, Augusta's score was 28 out of 100. This proposed ordinance is a move in the right direction because it offers protections and remedies at the local level for populations of the community that have historically faced discrimination on the basis of their race, their gender, veteran status, gender identity, age, disability, pregnancy status, and religion, among other things. This is not about adding additional regulations to businesses. In fact, I would submit to you, and I think that our local chamber would agree, that the city of Augusta has been extremely supportive of our business community. But more importantly, I want to personally say this, I've been a staunch and an ardent champion of the business community in the city of Augusta, which is consistent with my track record from the time that I was in the legislature, where I was recognized as one of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce's business champions. This also is not about declaring our community. This is about declaring our community as a place where we believe, without a shadow of doubt, that people should be treated as human beings, regardless of who they are. This is about letting people know that this government and this city is inclusive, not just inclusive, but also diverse, and that we are committed to treating everyone equally across our entire city. I would also add that this speaks to the very heartbeat of what it is to be one Augusta, a city of opportunity for everyone. On a day where we will allocate resources to preserve the history of our Jewish community, on a year that we again have seen significant racial unrest, it is only fitting that we in the city of Augusta affirm our belief that discrimination in any form has no home in the city of Augusta. Whether we worship in a synagogue or a church, whether we identify as a man or a woman, whether our hair is naturally straight or curly, or whether our head is covered by hijab, we in the city of Augusta believe that it is vitally important for us to make sure that all of our residents understand and know that they will enjoy the life, the liberty, and the pursuit of happiness regardless of who they are. Whether you're old or young, black or white, Hispanic or Asian, Jewish, Muslim or Christian or Baha'i, are Buddhist, we want you to know that you matter in the city of Augusta. This ordinance says that no matter how we differ in the city of Augusta, when you choose to visit us, when you choose to continue your education at one of our colleges or universities, or when you choose to raise a family there in our city and call this your place of home, that when a situation arises and that someone needs a person, an entity to step in, to intercede, to make sure that they're not discriminated against, that you will have a clear avenue for mediation at the local level. Without this ordinance, we're leaving people left in the balance with only the help of a federal option. I highlight a few things. Contrary to the popular conversation that's going on, there are no state anti-discrimination laws on the books. I want to remind everyone that the state of Georgia was one of 4 states in the union that until most recently in this most recent legislative session did not have hate crime laws on the books. South Carolina is now considering adopting measures as it relates to hate crimes. With this proposal, it would establish a 9-member Citizens' Rights and Community Relations Board. While this is not an oversight or an adjudication committee, this body will serve as the intake point for any discrimination complaints that are filed. Currently, the only external protections outside of local government and our employees will be federal recourse. Furthermore, this group of citizens, of individuals, will be tasked with developing programming in partnership with other civic and community-based organizations that would help us improve relations and bridge divides that have been persistent and systematic in our community, that hopefully would create understanding and compassion so that we recognize everyone as equal in the city of Augusta. The importance of passing this ordinance cannot be overstated. And while I do understand, and this is a concern that has been raised, but more importantly, we raised this ourselves in the mayor's office in the conversations. We recognize that this draft is being presented to you just as that, for strong consideration, with the understanding that it would in fact have to go through a second reading. We also told you early on that pursuant to the rules that the commission has established, that this was drafted using model legislation from multiple cities as well as multiple entities, with the full understanding that this did not go to the attorney's office, though we made efforts to communicate it to the attorney. And so to that end, today we've asked James Mintz, Melvin Ivey, Takia Brown, and Matthew Duncan to use 1 to 2 minutes to speak to this matter in that order. And should they have questions from the members of the commission, we'll make sure that you get an opportunity to ask your questions. Okay. Joining us today, we have Matthew Duncan, James Mintz, Ms. Takia Browning, and we will be awaiting, but we'll hear from them. All right, I've got a question from the commissioner from the 6th. I'd like to ask him if he wouldn't mind waiting, but if he wants to ask it now, I can go ahead and recognize the commissioner, son. I do want to give you deference.
I just want to make sure.
Okay.
I can't tell.
Okay. Okay. All right. And with that, James.
I'm ready.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you to the mayor and the Richmond County Commission for allowing me to speak on behalf of this ordinance. I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, where in 1996 an anti-gay ordinance was passed by the county council that was only recently removed thanks to longtime pressure by local activists. I was a teenager then and remember feeling unwelcome and fearful of what could happen if I stayed there. I moved to Augusta in 2002, gradually feeling comfortable to come out, and eventually joined the Augusta Pride Committee that has held a highly attended and respected annual festival since 2010. Each year, thousands are able to gather to promote visibility, unity, and provide education for the LGBTQA community in the CSRA region, along with providing free HIV testing to the public. Pride festivals have long helped with organizational efforts for LGBTQA rights, including the efforts of this year's landmark Supreme Court ruling that you can't be fired for your sexual orientation or gender identity. I'm thankful that the mayor's ordinance will make the area more welcoming to current and future citizens of Augusta, where they should not fear discrimination in the workplace. I never thought I would be president of a pride organization, let alone Augusta Pride's president, as a teenager 25 years ago, when the Greenville ordinance was wrongly issued. I'm proud to be a part of this process to make Augusta more welcoming for future generations and endorse its enactment.
Thank you, James. Matthew?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioners. My name is Matthew Duncan, and thank you all for giving us the opportunity to speak today. I'd like to start by saying that I am a lifelong resident of Augusta, minus school. I am an attorney here in Augusta, a small business owner that would fall under the parameters of this ordinance, and I am a member of the LGBTQ plus community. What I'd like to point out, particularly having read some of the information from the Chamber of Commerce, is that the concerns about this being duplicative, I do not think are very strong concerns that need to be addressed. As the mayor mentioned, we do not have state protections, and the federal protections under the Civil Rights Act that were expanded by the Supreme Court to include the LGBT plus community this summer. They only apply to businesses of a certain size, generally 50 or more. So there is that gap between 1 employee and 49 that generally in Augusta and anywhere in the state where the city didn't adopt these proposals would not have any protections from discrimination. So there is the only duplication would come for those businesses that have that threshold already met by the federal government. Now, those businesses and the ones that are members of the Chamber of Commerce, they're already well equipped to deal with this. The Federal Civil Rights Act applies to them, and so they're required to address those concerns in federal court. So this is not going to create an additional burden for those businesses, to have to apply this potentially in a local forum. For the smaller businesses, I would submit, particularly as a small business owner myself, that the ordinance does not appear to create an undue burden, particularly when we're talking about protecting the rights of the citizens of Augusta. The non-discrimination policy will create a forum in Augusta with mediation. It seems like it'll be way less burdensome than federal litigation would be. And I would think that the Chamber of Commerce and other business owners would welcome the likelihood that cases that don't meet the severity of a federal case would have a forum that they could go to that would not be, potentially going up to the Supreme Court and cause all this litigation and the expenses of federal litigation. These are places where, and I think this ordinance addresses it, the severity of the infraction can be met by the remedy. If it's a small business where there's unfortunately some type of discrimination, it might be resolved in mediation. And same thing for a large company. So to the extent that there's any duplication, I would think it would be welcome because this is a lower, more cost-effective resolution for all parties. The last thing I would say is that this is a matter of competition, essentially, for the best and the brightest in Georgia and around the country. Savannah has this non-discrimination protections. Atlanta has these non-discrimination protections. Augusta does not. And as they pointed out, the Municipal Equality Index, we score fairly low, and this would increase our score. And members of all communities want to know that if they move here, that they're not going to be discriminated against simply because of who they are. Their economic livelihood will not be at risk, and they'll have some forum outside of an expensive federal court system where they'll be able to address those concerns and find relief. So I do implore the commission to vote to push this forward. There might be areas that need to be addressed and modified, but Augusta certainly needs this ordinance. We've been pushing for similar protections for quite some time. And like I said, as someone who grew up in Augusta and knew he was gay from a very young age, it's very heartwarming to be at this point with the leaders of my community. So thank you, and I do urge you to pass this ordinance.
All right, thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Takia Brown.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Takia Browning. Good morning or good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and the commissioners, James and Matt. I am one of the past presidents of Augusta Pride. I am the first Black woman who happens to be gay to serve in that seat. And it was my pleasure. And I have known some amazing people, but we do have issues that need to be addressed when it comes to the fairness of how we live our life. I tell anybody, for anything that I've ever been able to do or have needed to do, somebody has had to march and fight and scream and holler for me to be able to do it. I'm a Black woman from South Carolina. I am from Charleston, South Carolina. It is a slave port. My entire family is from there. Everything that I've had to do, somebody has had to fight for me. I don't think that this ordinance is any different, and it's one of the reasons why I lend my voice to Augusta Pride, and it's one of the reasons why I'm lending my voice to this ordinance. It is beyond time. It's 2020, and a lot has happened in 2020, but one of the positive things that needs to happen is the fairness and the diversity for people who happen to live next door to you or across the street from you. There's no reason, absolutely no reason why somebody should be discriminated against simply because of their race, their color, their creed, their orientation, or anything of that nature. There's no reason. When we are working, we work every day side by side, people, just to get a common goal done. No reason to attack what they do at home when they are with their family, their mates, and just trying to make their lives just as good as anybody else or the next person. So I implore the commissioners to pay attention to the people who live right next door to you, the people who live across the street from you, the people who don't happen to live in the same communities as you. Pay attention to those people because there's a need. And just because we don't need it every day doesn't mean that somebody doesn't. So thank you very much for listening. Have a great day.
Thank you, Ms. Browning. I'm going to close out my comments with the following, and then I'm going to go to the commissioner from the 6th who had his hand up. I want to thank each of our speakers, James, Matthew, and Ms. Browning, for your comments on today. The premise behind this, again, proposed ordinance is extremely timely and important for us as a community that, again, as we talk about equity and inclusion across the entire state of Georgia, as one of the co-chairs of GMA's Equity and Inclusion Task Force and Commission. What this ordinance proposes is to offer protections and remedies at the local level for populations of the community that have historically faced discrimination in employment and housing and public accommodations on the basis of their race, including hair texture and protective styles, religion, veteran status, and sex, whether that's pregnancy, sexual orientation, or gender identity. This ordinance proposed is nothing more than a continuation of the unanimously adopted personal Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual that this commission adopted in 2018. I want to remind everyone that our presenters today come from our LGBT community, of which we want to make sure that not only do they know that they have equal rights and access in our city, but anyone from these other classes, especially when there are no state laws and your only recourse is federal. I want to remind members of the commission that there have been three events that have happened recently here in the city of Augusta. Most recently, we had the murder of a individual that we commonly refer to as Felicia in the community. Subsequent to that, you had another member of the LGBT community who was killed, Wyman Scott, a Payne. And then last year in 2019, a woman here in the city of Augusta filed a discrimination complaint because she was from the Muslim community and she had on her hijab. This is not new in the city of Augusta. And for our local chamber to suggest that this is duplicative, it's onerous, that this is not good for businesses, might I submit to you that this is how cities move forward. This is not only how cities move forward, but this is how you create an inclusive community that is representative of diverse people from all walks of life. And that's where we want to be in the city of Augusta. And so with that, I'm going to pause here and go to the commissioner from the cities. Commissioner Saul.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to all the presenters. It was an honor and pleasure to hear your concerns about your personal well-being and well-being of persons of any of potential discrimination. I empathize with you. The mayor just mentioned Felicia. Felicia is one who was related to me by marriage, so I'm very well of that. From a religious perspective, I'm familiar with what that looks like, being discriminated based on religion. So my concern today has nothing to do with any of those things. It concerns about how we operate internally as a government. That's clearly, so I want you to understand that. This has nothing to do about anything that you all have said today. It's more about our internal operation from a governmental perspective. Mr. Mayor, as you know, we had this conversation with yourself and the young man, Mr. Naeem, called me about a position, and I shared those concerns. And those concerns are not necessary in this order, but those concerns that I asked you, had the law department looked at this in terms of what you was presenting? And your response was no. You're the law department, and I think the other young man, I can't think of his name, they have chosen not to look at it. Well, as you know, Ms. Belmo, so that was that. I'll get back to the realization of that. Another thing I asked you is, had the business community, I think it's unfair for the business community, the public at large, to put this on that we not had a public discussion about this to get to a better place for businesses in particular can understand what are some of the consequences that they could face for potential discrimination. I asked you about that as well. The other thing I asked you, what expertise would these 9 persons have to be discerned, to be able to determine when persons have been discriminated against? Also, actually, I think I might have mentioned to you, also actually had Ms. Irvin done something similar, but as you may mention, that was more internal than it was external, as we're talking about today across the city. But from an ordinance perspective, Mr. Mayor, the reason why I think, and I didn't say that that day, but it has come to my attention, my thought process, that is because the attorney of the law department realizes the policy that we passed in 15 or 16, probably been 15, in terms of when we want to take on actions like this, the commission made a decision first, are we going to take this action on? And then we come back, and then the ordinance is draft. The mayor's office or extracting the ordinance from another jurisdiction is not sufficient necessarily from Augusta until the law department looks at it and may lay it down just as it is. So it's unfair to us until we go through that process, Mr. Mayor. And that's what we don't want to start going on that way. I think the real concern about that is something that you mentioned in your early part of your presentation, is that in the future, you're going to bring something else. And we probably had not looked at it. I can't remember exactly what you said that's going to look like, but from where we do business internally, Mr. Mayor, the law department had not seen it. It's an ordinance that we did not draft and has not been said, okay, that'll go. The 9 persons there, and also the public, the business person at all, have not had an opportunity to look at this and weigh in on this, Mr. Mayor. And I think it's unfair at this time. It's premature at this time, even though I support it fully when we get it done right or do it right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, thank you, Commissioner Hassan, and I appreciate that. The 3 questions that you posed, we addressed them head on, and we were very clear with you that the law department chose not to look at what we drafted. And they did that in concert with your statement that in 2016, the Augusta Commission adopted the Hardy rules. And that is where, again, instead of us being a policy making at a legislative body, you got to have a conversation first before you would even consider drafting or adopting something. A perfect example of that is what happened just a moment ago. The commissioner from the 4th wanted to recognize in some formal way the efforts of our Board of Elections. But because of the adoption of the Hardy rules, of where you can't draft legislation for consideration and for discussion until you have 6 members of the commission agree to it, he had to come today, when reality of it is he should have been able to bring a draft to the table for debate and consideration, but that didn't happen. And so now we're going to take another 2 weeks. In fact, not even 2 weeks, it's going to happen next year because we won't meet again, of where you'll have a resolution of commendation for the Board of Elections. So I would just submit to you that you are spot on. And I, again, don't have any problem with us having the law department go through that. So let's agree on that. That's number one. I fundamentally agree on that is the approach that was taken. But that's why, because we've said we will not operate and function as a legislative or a policy-making body. Those other matters, again, this
interpretation.
To the point about the 9 members, they're not an adjudicating body. They are a hearing, and the goal is, as you heard even Matthew Duncan say, to be the first line of defense so that you're not going and having to go to EEOC that subsequently will end up with federal courts, lawsuits and things like that. And I think that's important for us as a community to begin addressing this, moving forward as a community that is inclusive in nature. And so, again, I appreciate your comments. Commissioner from the 4th, and then the 9th.
Thank you, sir. My concern is a little bit on the line with the commission from the 6th, but not entirely. I had a conversation with you about this, and I could be wrong, but I'm gonna put this piece out. Was it going to be a policy? Notwithstanding, but for an ordinance, we have a process for that. And you mentioned the fact about the 3 p.m. And as you know, we have a policy and procedure subcommittee that's been working on those things. And for me, the proper pace for this ordinance, a request to start this ordinance could have started with the policies and procedure subcommittee, and we'd have went through the same procedure, or we could have started with, well, there's a request to do an ordinance. And I don't have a problem with supporting an anti-discrimination ordinance or something to that effect that ensures everyone is treated fairly. But also, I think our process should be treated fairly. We, as a body, have adopted a policy that I know not everyone in the government agreed with. But whether you agree with it or not, you can't go around it. And so the bottom line, I commend the law department for standing up and following the policy and procedure that this governing body has adopted. And so, if we do it the way we've done it, broad support, both from the governing body, community, businesses, and everything, I think can be attained. Some things that may need to be tweaked, some things that need to be concerning to folks. But at this point, none of that has had the opportunity to come to the table. So I really think we need to, I don't want to say go back to the drawing board, but we need to go back to the process that we've established, and we can allow all these entities, including commission, to get a full understanding and a full reading of this and an understanding of the ramifications for the future. As you yourself stated, This is extremely important. You didn't use the word historic, but you went through some historical time frames. So absolutely, it's very important. So I think we need to do it right. And right now, at this point, I don't see it as the process of being quite right. So thank you for thank you for allowing me to make my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I appreciate the civility of this conversation. I'm going to go to the commissioner from the 9th, but let me remind y'all of what your policy says. And we don't have to couch it. I thought it was a terrible idea then, and I think it's an equally terrible idea now, especially when it comes to the legislative process. But your policy says that no one could, that the law department has to get approval to draft it. That's what your policy says, that you have to have 6 votes for the law department to begin drafting an ordinance. It does not say that no one else could draft an ordinance for consideration. It says the law department, that is the process, okay? All right, Commissioner from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been a stickler for the rules, and I call myself studying them real hard. But you, first of all, you came to me and we talked about it, and I was in agreement with this ordinance. I support the LGBT community as well. And I know about discrimination. I've been discriminated against as much as anybody in this city. I know it's alive and well. But I don't want to change the process of what we do now. It takes 6 votes to instruct the law department. I can't instruct the law department to write an ordinance, and neither can the mayor. It takes 6 votes, and the process is what the process is. I'm in support. I'm in 100% support. And I wish there was something that we could do about the complexion of your skin, because more people have been discriminated by the complexion of the skin than their sexual orientation. And it's still happening today, even with Columbia County talking about what they're talking about with the new DA. Now, we're not going to talk about that, but all that fits right in this same subject. Soon as the Black Democrat won the election and the white Republican lost, now everything going to change. That's discrimination, man. So I'm in support of trying to do what we need to do. And I think that community know I've been in support of them. I met with them, and they strongly know I'm going to stand for what I believe is right. So all I think we need to do is direct the attorney to look at this. I asked you a question when we met, Mr. Mayor, was other cities doing it? If it meet the guidelines of the law, it shouldn't be so hard either. But I can't tell the attorney to do it, and you can't tell the attorney to do it. We got to go by the process. Those are the rules of this commission. So what we need to do today, I think, is direct our attorney to look at this and bring it back to us and give us the pros and cons, and we ought to vote it up, vote it down. Now, we won't have another meeting because the commission decided, and I didn't decide, but to shorten the month up because of holiday, we ain't gonna meet no more. We still working, we still elected to the end of the year, but some smart folks got smart, said we don't need to meet no more the rest of this year. We hadn't been meeting with this epidemic anyway, unless we do it like we're doing this today. So there are some issues here, and I think this community need to know that we're behind them, we support them. I am not going to tolerate any discrimination that I can stop, talk about, bring up, and let people do what they want to do and treat people any kind of way. That's not going to happen on my watch. So I think the next thing to do, Mr. Mayor, for us to send this to the attorney to give him the authorization through 6 votes, whether it be a letter, whether it be 6 yes or 6 no's or whatever it is, but we can give him the authority through the process that we're supposed to be following as elected official that we have not been following. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Commissioner, I really appreciate that, and I like your passion. I thought for a minute there you were about to say some come by letter, some by water. A Christian spirit when you started.
Yeah,
I thought that's where you're going, but let me ask you this. You were passionate about it, and again, you were very clear that you're not going to tolerate discrimination in this city. You said it, the commissioner from the 6th said it, the commissioner from the 4th has said it. So again, I think then if it pleases the commission, the chair will entertain a motion to direct the attorney to draft legislation around the non-discrimination ordinance.
And one other thing as well.
Okay.
This motion should also include, as what my colleague from the 6th mentioned, we need to have some kind of input from the community. I have them opportunity to weigh in on this, whether it's whatever process we use when to bring it back from the attorney, and so that when we do this, when we get this done, then it's done right. Whether everybody agree or not, that's one thing. But if we know that we did it right and everybody had their chance to say what they need to say, then I will feel comfortable voting one way or the other on it to say, because definitely I don't support discrimination, but I think we need to make sure that we are fair to everybody in this community. Thank you.
Yeah.
But don't we have a second, Mr. Mayor, don't we have a second reading? If anybody got any problem, they come to second reading.
Absolutely.
We don't bring the public in to see what they think about it. We put some out there, and then we have a second reading. If there's an opposal, they can come in and voice their opinion then, right?
No, this is the public comment.
Let's pause for a moment, because right now what's in front of us is simply just this, and that is a motion to direct the attorney to begin drafting an ordinance. During the debate process, that is when the public gets an opportunity to weigh in. That is what we historically have done. We did the same thing with the smoke-free Augusta ordinance as well. We gave the public opportunity to weigh in during that period of time.
That's all I'm talking about. I don't know what this other
Absolutely.
client's talking about.
So it's not anything new. Did we get a second for that? We had a motion. Did we get a second for that? The addition from the, okay.
I'm making a substitute motion.
Hold on, everybody hold on. I'm gonna go to the commissioner from the 6th. State Inquirer, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to arrange that we have public meetings so the public can weigh in on this, public business in particular, because that's who's we have something internal. This is an external document across the city, and at that particular time, once the public weighs in on it, then the attorney is authorized to draft it, begin to look at the document in the meantime, look what our options in the meantime, and then officially draft the ordinance once we see fit to move forward.
Commissioner Zahn, that's inconsistent with the process. We either directed the attorney to draft an ordinance or we're not, and then bring it back to us. At that point, if you want to have the public conversations, you certainly can. I think where we are right now is that there's already a public conversation going on, and the contention before us is that, quote, the process wasn't followed.
Well, let me say
having the attorney draft it.
Let me say it this way then. If you want the attorney to draft something, then you draft it, you post it for the public to see it first, and then we start to take a vote. And when we bring it back, we don't vote it initially. It's for the public to look at it, to weigh in on it, and then we start the voting process our next meeting. The public should weigh in on it before we start wasting our time. Man, this is a public document here. This is not an internal document.
Every ordinance that we adopt has opportunity for the public to debate, whether it's liquor licenses, whether it's housing.
That's my motion,
It doesn't matter.
Motion.
Excuse me? That wasn't included in the commissioner's, that would be a substitute that you're talking about.
I made a substitute motion.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I didn't get who made the original motion, and I didn't get that.
Mr. Science made the original motion, and Fenard second.
Well, Mr. Science got tied to heels that you have a public conversation.
And the public conversation is always after you've drafted something for the public to look at and discuss it. You haven't even taken a vote at that point. We did the exact same thing with the Augusta smoke-free ordinance process.
Well, I
to
just
suggest
said
that that's not the case, we took however many months for that to happen.
Mr. Mayor, I just said I don't have a problem if you draft the document, but we don't vote it. The document then is presented to the public. We start a public conversation, then we come back and vote on it. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, so what are we talking about now then? I mean, you don't need a substitute then. All you need to do is just vote on the main motion, and that is to have the attorney draft the doggone thing.
No, that's not true.
That's
not true. That's not true.
That's not all I said. I said I will. Let me restate this motion loud and clear. I move that we send this to the attorney for review, for construction and review, and then we have public hearings on this, as the mayor has said, very similar to the smoke ordinance. And that wasn't requiring a vote. That was a hearing where we allowed the public to come in and do input. And that was more than once. So when we get it, we get the document, we get the ordinance constructed, we allow public comment to come in, and then we do whatever revision. We made revisions on the smoke ordinance during public hearing. So that's my motion. Have the attorney draft the ordinance, and then we have public hearing.
Second, I second.
I still second that, Mr. Mayor.
Fantastic. All right, Madam Clerk, you got that?
I got it.
All right, voting. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner from the first has a point of person privilege.
Mr. Mayor, I support this ordinance, and I'm against discrimination in any form or fashion. But as a commissioner in District 1, I think a lot of times people get discriminated against because of the zip code. I cannot begin to tell you how many times when there's a issue in District 1 when one of my constituents would say, if I lived on Walton Way, the upper end of Walton Way, we wouldn't have this problem. Or if I lived in another part of the city, we wouldn't have this problem. And even though that may not be true, that's the perception that the people in District 1 and District 2 have. If you look at the blight that exists in District 1 and District 2, you see it like you don't see it to that degree in any other part of the city. And a lot of people believe that the reason it's the way it is because of where they live. Again, I I probably won't be here to vote on it unless I change my mind about coming out of office. But I think that
All right, let's vote.
We got it. We got it. We got it, Commissioner from the first. We got it. We got it. Madam Clerk voting.
They're gonna bring both of them out of office.
Yeah, voting, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Clark,
Are we voting on the substitute motion?
we didn't have a substitute.
There is no substitute.
There's no substitute.
Right.
This motion is to direct the attorney to draft a non-discrimination ordinance, hold a public hearing, then be reviewed by the commission. Mr. Clark.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did you hear him, sir?
You see, yes.
Yes.
That was the commission from the field with all that laughing.
Okay, Mr. Clark, yes. Ms. Davis? She's out. Mr. Fenoy?
yes.
Mr. Franum?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Mr. Hassan?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams?
Yes.
That motion carries with Ms. Davis out.
All right, thank you. We're going to ask our guests, they can exit now. Ms. Duncan, Mr. Duncan, Ms. Brown, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
James, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank y'all. Madam Clerk, back to the top.
Okay. We are at item number 18, I believe. Item.
Oh, Madam Clerk, no, we're at
Oh,
14
yeah,
and
that's
15.
all. Well, we didn't do 19.
Well, 14 and 15,
Oh.
the commissioner from the 9th objected to those, and the administrator was going to speak to those.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Mayor and
Hold
Council.
on a minute, Administrator.
Item 14 is a motion to approve HCD's Laney Walker Bethlehem revitalization project contract procedural process relative to the authorization of agreements, contracts, task orders for the first quarter of the calendar year of 2021. Item 15 is to approve Housing and Community Development's contract, HCD and J. Lovett Homes and Construction, LLC, to construct one workforce single family housing unit identified as 1518 Twig Street.
All right, Chair recognizes the commissioner from the 9th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And when I hear about Laney Walker Bethlehem revitalization program, and it kind of bothers me now as I rode through Twig Street in item 15, and I saw the construction of the house that's being built across the street from the last that we built. And my question is, what are we doing? I wanted somebody from housing development just to help me out for what we built across the street and what it looked like being built, because it's not finished, Mr. Mayor. It's just totally different. And I just need some update on that. So can Mr. Welcher, somebody help me understand? Are we building a modern?
Administrator Donald's going to answer those questions for you.
Okay.
Administrator Donald.
Yes, sir. So right now, the request that is up is for the construction of that one workforce house that's for sale on the Twig Street corridor. So this is one of 28 units that's either for sale or under construction. And all of the proceeds, although we're asking to fund the construction of this home, all of the proceeds from the home will come back to the city of Augusta. I think part of some of the confusion is that the commission actually approves the overall plan, and then each part of the activity comes back before you. And so this is just one of the homes that's being developed in that corridor.
Okay, Mr. O'Donnell, it's not necessarily the finances I'm talking about now. I'm talking about the type structure, and we do approve it. We approve those things. But when I saw the construction compared to what we built across the street, compared to what we're building now, I mean, I've got some issue with that. I mean, the stuff that they're building now, the first one that I see is really, and I don't know how to describe it. I don't know, because I don't know how to.
Are you saying that the concept and construction is not in line with the rest of the homes on that street?
Exactly. The homes on the street, on the other side of the street, is just totally different. How do we expect, as a government, and not just the housing director, but we expect people to move into an area where you're gonna be buying on one side and renting on the other side? That's like we had a thing they wanted to put mixed use income. Mm-hmm. Mixed use income don't work in my mind now. You got somebody living in a low and moderate income apartment and somebody that's paying high rate rent, and the low income properties down there who people not being responsible tears down everything else. So we done put good money across the street. Now we coming back building what I saw the other day, and I went through that. And then we set them up to fail, in my opinion, Mr. O'Donnell. I mean, you hadn't been out there personally, but we need as a city to look at what we build and what we trying to get people to do. You have a rent across the street with a car parked on the grass, and I'm buying a house next door on the other side of the street. And I mean, that's a recipe for failure. And I got a problem. We don't take care of the people no more better than that. I mean, it's been approved and it's going to pass. I can't stop it now. It's already started construction, but some just don't add up. I'm in the wrong field.
I wouldn't disagree with you on that topic, but I would add a caveat. And Jeff, if you can patch Director Welcher in so he could also give some comments. I think he's interested in joining But Commissioner, what I would say is when you look at the city's investment, I think that the commission looked at it holistically. And so the properties that are owned by the city, adding a level of investment and kind of raising the bar in that community, you know, you also pass that expectation and those requirements on to the renters in that community. And so not allowing it to remain in the state that it is and adding those strong structures like the one you seeing built, but then also leveraging the city, everything from code enforcement, enforcing our requirements, and then demanding a higher level of renter in that community, and not so much income level, but responsibility is something that the city is focused on. And so I definitely agree with you that we've got to hold folks accountable and make sure they step their game up to make the city's investment a lot stronger, but we're doing both. And I think that investment in the house, you know, helps to jumpstart that.
Well, and I agree. Holding people accountable, Mr. McDonald, is one thing, but you got to give them a little bit more. And I don't mean give them. I'm talking about you provide with them, you provide for them a little bit better quality than what they had. You put them back in the same type situation, although it's new. There's some area. I mean, you got to ride. I'm here to December 31st. There's some situations in South Augusta out there that I would let my German Shepherd stay out there, and we don't allow people to build probably 200 homes out there. And it's so big, you can reach out the window and touch the next house. That's a recipe for failure. We putting people in the same condition, just another person, because the old people done died on. In another 10 years, it's gonna be another dilapidated, rundown situation. So
yes,
I don't need much watch. I just want to bring that point because I rode by there and I saw what was on one side that looked very nice. And on the opposite side, I said, this is where they're going to put, I wouldn't buy that house. I wouldn't want to stay there and somebody across the street, even though we're trying to bring the community up. But at the same time, you look at it, who going to stay there? How long they going to stay there? They say they get their feet on the ground, then they going to leave it to somebody else. Then we're going to have to rent it out. So if we're going to fix it, let's fix it. Let's don't patch it, let's fix it.
Understood. That's a fair point. Fully received.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner from the first.
Let me see. Am I muted, Mr. Mayor?
We hear you loud and clear, sir.
Okay. You know, if you ride up Pine Street, you have houses that sold from $150,000 to $240,000. But also on Pine Street, you have people that are renting in duplexes. If you go to the end of Pine Street on Florence Street, you'll see a number of renters on Pine Street, and the renters have complimented the homeowners on Pine Street. I don't totally agree with Commissioner Williams, and I don't totally disagree with Commissioner Williams. But Pine Street is a good example of where renters and homeowners can complement each other and coexist.
Commissioner from the fourth.
Thank you, sir. I'm gonna make a motion to approve this, but first I want to make this comment. When I listened to Director Welch get jumped all over about displacement, about we going in these areas and lane walk areas and so forth, and we building houses that folks couldn't afford to come back to the area. Well, I think he's done a pretty good job on trying to accommodate both, building new homes, have a marketplace home, below marketplace home, and workforce housing. So, but when we do that, you know, you're getting blasted again. So we need to understand what we are asking for. And I think he's done a very good job over there in mixing up rental enough for rental housing and enough for workforce and marketplace. So I move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Mayor, hold it. I can't let this go now.
Commissioner from the ninth. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, sir. If Mr. West were building them same kind of houses in Jamestown, The commissioner from the floor wouldn't be saying that now. If he's doing the same thing he doing now in the inner city in Jamestown out there, South Augusta, he wouldn't be saying that. I'm not opposed to Mr. Welcher. I'm not saying he's not doing a good job. But there's some stuff that you got to bring people up from. You can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. And all we doing is building a modern day. But ain't nothing like they got on Pine Street out there in South Augusta. Nothing. I ain't talking about the Pine Street. I'm talking about the inner city.
All right, I've got a motion and a second to approve. Voting.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Davis, Mr. Fenoy. Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes.
Mr. Son,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams.
No, ma'am.
Mr. Fenoy, no, I got a yes, Ms. Bonner.
Thank you, sir. That motion carries with Ms. Davis out and Commissioner Marion Williams voting no.
We're going to the.
Madam Clerk, next item.
Okay. That would take us to item 19. Item 18 was disposed of in our special call meeting on the 1st of December.
That's correct.
Item number 19 is a motion to approve the erection of a memorial wall at Riverwalk in honor of Augustans who lost their lives to COVID-19.
Commissioner from the first.
Mr. Bay, I want to modify that motion for a memorial plaque to honor those that have lost their lives through COVID-19 to be placed on the river, and the names of the people would not be on the
plaque.
Yeah, on the plaque, right?
Okay.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion and a second. Voting.
Mr. Clark,
Okay, I'll vote for a plaque, yes.
Ms. Davis, Mr. Fenoy,
Yes.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams, we lost him? Okay. How are you
Yes,
voting?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Marion Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries with Ms. Davis out and Mr. Garrett voting no.
Madam Clerk, next item.
That would be item number, oh, well, are you going to do SPOS list now, sir? Or are you going to do that?
We're going to come back to that. That'll be one of the last things we do.
Okay. Well, item number 28, and I think we had a companion item of 33 for Commissioner Garrett.
That's correct.
Okay.
2833.
Okay, item 28 is to approve installation of 16 streetlights along Datnack Street and Walton Way, Dick Boulevard at a construction cost of $150,000 at an annual cost of $8,570.88. Item 28. Item 33 is to approve award of streetlight poles and fixtures annual contract at an estimated cost of $75,000.
Commissioner Garrett.
Thank you. I actually have a question for the engineering director, if that's okay.
All right. I don't have access. Jeff, can you bring him into the queue? Mr. Escher? Can you silence your YouTube? Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Garrett.
You know, as we continue to go through approving new streetlights that are being rolled out in the city and the cost associated with those, and with all of us just working through the budget and seeing the shortfall that we have in our streetlight program, one of the questions that continually comes to mind is, what is the cost difference of installing solar streetlights instead of adding more and more to the grid? That way we're not adding further costs.
That's
a good question. We have recently purchased 3 solar lights with a company who provides solar lights, and they have a good look to them, and they match a lot of what we already have installed, especially downtown. And we're going to put those up after the first of the year and test them out and see what we're going to see how they work, basically. For these 2 items in particular, Diaknak Street is the street that goes in front of University Hospital. I'm sure you know that. But those lights are old. The system hasn't worked in a long time. And that was one of Commissioner Fenoy's requests, was that we try to get all the lights around the hospital working. And so we've already taken care of several of the streets, and Diaknak is the last that we last
Can
major.
I add to that?
And then also the other item is just an on-call contract to allow us to easier purchase the materials we need to maintain the system. But we are testing solar lights to see how they work compared to a standard light, to see if that's a direction we want to move.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I would like to add to that. Actually, we have Riceboro Road projects. It's under design from Harlan to Jackson, and that project we will include solar lights as a pilot project to study the cost and maintenance cost and savings. So that is actually full length project, around 185 lights will be. So that is also under design right now.
Thank you. Next we have Commissioner Clark, then Commissioner Fenoy.
Well, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I was just going to ask where they were going to be tested out, because Commissioner Garrett and I have been pushing for solar light for quite some time now, and think that it would probably go, because of the yearly cost of the fee, that it would be more economical if we could even, consider, maybe after we're testing these and they prove to be successful, that we start installing them pretty much everywhere, and especially in new communities being built. And therefore we would, get away from the streetlight fee that we keep going in the hole with every year. It would just be a replenishment instead of a fee. So it's good to hear that we're moving forward with solar lighting. So that's just what I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fenoy.
Yes, I just want to say that I've been working with Mr. Urshery for past couple of years to get those lights on Diaknak replaced. They don't work, and when daylight saving time goes into effect, it is pitch black dark, and you have a lot of employees got to walk across the street. You got a lot of hospital visitors that park on the other side and walk across the street to the hospital. To brighten up that area will make it a whole lot safer for the employees and the visitors that crosses Diaknak Street.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Marion Williams.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I hope engineering is considering the maintenance of these trees. We got street lights up, but the trees blocking their light. It makes no sense to have these lights that's coming on, whether it be at the Antonac or any other street, but I hope engineering and Mr. Urshery and them is looking at, when they put these lights up, whether or not they are putting off the light that we need because of the overgrown vegetating for the trees that's in the area. And I guess he can answer that's been addressed.
Okay. Commissioner Sias,
Thank you. Move to approve.
Second.
got a motion and a second from Commissioner Garrett. Any other discussion? All right, Ms. Bonner, if we could vote, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Fenoy,
Yes.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett. He's muted, sir. but-
Muted.
Yes,
Yes.
and I just want to say thank you to Mr. Oshry and Dr. Malik for moving forward with implementing solar.
Okay. Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams.
Yes.
Ms.
Item
Bonner,
2833 passes unanimously.
thank you. Next agenda item, Ms. Bonner.
Okay, I think, sir, that would take us to the administrator, item 37.
Okay.
I didn't know if you had-
Yes, this item was very, very quick. Just wanted to highlight to the commission that, we've got a lot of different, I guess, weekly updates and different things that have come out that aren't as robust with the information of the activities that are coming to the city. And so it's just a notification that to replace that, similar as to administrators and managers in other cities, on the last meeting of the month, will provide a full and robust administrator's report as a submission to mayor and commission, and an example of which will be provided by end of week after I've had an opportunity to coordinate with all of the directors. I think secondly, as a part of that, we want to start providing a clearer report on the impact of the coronavirus on our operations. And so we'll start updating you on those activities related to number of positive cases, impact on operations, as well as how we've responded, any financial impact that goes along with that. And I've worked with the clerk. We've had a conversation with the clerk of the commission, just highlighting that, and she's already talked about that you have the 2021 meeting agenda. We want to just make sure that we include, as you make the decisions on your January meeting, the impacts of SPLOST 8 and executing that agreement. So that is all for item number 37.
All right, we'll receive that as information. Next agenda item, Ms. Bonner.
Yes, sir. That would be, are we going to do the SPLOST discussions now, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, or are we going to do those after we complete the agenda?
Can we take 38 as its own entity, or do
Yes,
we?
sir, you can. Okay.
Yeah, let's just get through
Item
these.
38 is to approve the intergovernmental agreement, sales tax agreement between Augusta and the cities of Blythe and Hepzibah for the distribution of the SPLOST generated from SPLOST 8 referendum.
Administrator Donald, if you could speak to this real fast on the totals and then maybe the discussion, you and the mayor.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So as we discussed previously, the overall cost or the overall allocation based on population was a little bit under $6 million. After having consultation with all three mayors, as well as bringing information back to the Augusta Commission, the numbers were up to about $9 million, $7.5 million is allocated to Hepzibah, with 1.5 million going to Blythe. And that will be a part of the overall $250 million allocation. And I believe that each of those entities approved that last week on their behalf, and they're just waiting for the commission to authorize.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussions? All right, Ms. Bonner, if we could please vote.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Davis, Mr. Fenoy.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fenoy, he's out. Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, Mr. Son,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries with Mr. Fenoy out.
Yes, for
Yes.
Mr. Fenoy.
It's unanimous.
All right. Turn it back over to Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Madam Clerk, I think we've got a few more items before we get to the SPLOST conversation, which I'm hoping that we can move as expeditiously as possible. I think I owe the Mayor Pro Tem lunch in light of a broader conversation we had about our timing today. Clearly, I was wrong. We're not moving as fast as I thought we would have. So let's take up item number 41.
Okay. Item 41, discuss proposal for small business relief program for licenses and fees for the 2021 calendar year.
All right, Chair recognizing Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm going to ask Administrator Donald to, in just a second, kind of chime in because he's worked hard on this and I appreciate that. As we know, businesses really suffered starting in March with the pandemic and everything that would happen. And we talked about this back in March that as a body, we would do something to help these businesses as much as we can. We're about to lose 2 restaurants downtown just because of the times they're not going to be able to make it to the better ones down there. And, you know, we've talked about what can we do to help. And as the administrator, I'll let him kind of go through just a second. But for me, I think it's vital that we look at reducing the admin fee to all businesses at either a 15 to 25% reduction. I actually think a 15% reduction with a 2-year aspect because we know that first quarter is not going to be the same where we are currently in the country. When we approved the budget, we talked about the 1.4 million CARES Act money, possibly to help with discounts to some of these businesses as well. But I think that we need to revisit that conversation. I know that might not be in the administrator's recommendation, but I think we owe it to this community to really have that deep conversation because, you know, people are hurting. People have reached out to every one of us, I'm sure, about this, as well as the extension of deadlines. Some of the deadlines being extended out, whether that's the alcohol to March 1st and the businesses to June 30th. That would just be an easy thing for us to do to help kind of burden the pain of not being able to have the revenue coming in currently. As far as the alcohol, we'd have to do a submitted letter to those businesses, letting them know that they don't have their license for the new year, but they have a letter kind of showing it. And I just think that like from a standpoint of the admin fee, it's just not enough. I think that we have an opportunity to help. And yeah, the admin fee on the business license and the alcohol licenses will help. And I still say that we ought to look at a little bit more of reductions to the business licenses across the board, not just alcohol license. Commissioner Merriman and I, we talked about that. Everybody needs to help. And if we can support these businesses with the CARES Act money to kind of backfill, I think we need to look at that. But I'd kind of like to just turn it over to the administrator, Donald, to kind of go through what he's proposing, because I think it's a great start, but I think as a commission, we've got to look at it holistically and try to help as much as we can, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I think we've got some questions before, all right, Commissioner from the 10th, State to inquire.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm absolutely in favor of helping our small homegrown businesses with everything in any way that we can. But I do have a question as to it's going to be kind of how are we going to do it across the board? And you have giant corporations like Walmart, the convenience stores that never missed a beat, did not lock their doors, did not miss a dollar on because of COVID-19. Are we going to give them the same break as we're trying to give our small businesses and our small restaurants and our homegrown people who are totally vested their money, their personal money in our businesses? I want to help them, but how are we going to be able to separate our homegrown businesses from the corporate businesses? How are we going to be able to do that without a backlash?
Thank you, Commissioner from the 10th. I'm gonna mention something and then I'm gonna recognize the administrator. And when we first started the conversation about small business relief, there was a one-page set of guidelines that clearly articulated who qualified as a small business. That would have addressed the issues associated with your big box retailers and would have gave you clear direction about how to navigate through that. And I would submit that everyone should go back to that document that has really clear and specific guidelines about small businesses. It also is consistent with what has been used in other communities, Atlanta, Athens, Savannah, the Cab, in terms of how they try to meet the needs of their local small business community and not necessarily the big box retailers. So that's what I would offer. And I'm coming to you now, Administrator Don.
Yes, sir. Well, Mayor Pro Tem, Commission, thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion. I think the Mayor Pro Tem mentioned it, right on par, and Commissioner Clark, also hit some of those concerns. So I would call this, step one of addressing small business relief, which is solely focused on the alcohol and business licenses, but both to the public and to the commission. I think that the will of the commission has been to ensure that this is a continuous process that we continue to evaluate, just like we're continuing to evaluate the pandemic as a whole. And so step one, when looking at alcohol licenses and business licenses, it would be in the alcohol time frame to 3/1, March 1st of 2021. And then for business licenses, it would be for to extend it through June 30th, so effective July 1. And I'm sorry, it would be through February 28th for alcohol licenses, which of course, again, makes it effective on March 1. In addition to that, you would waive all fees and penalties during that time frame. And specific to business licenses, you would reduce the administrative fee by 15% for a 2-year period, because we expect those businesses to not only incur losses in 20 and 21, but they'll also be negatively impacted in 22. So making that a 2-year reduction would provide a benefit. In addition to that, our partners at the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and I think it would have been discussed separately on the addendum agenda, but there was a notion to provide a waiver to the Convention and Visitors Bureau to actually waive their fee for the license for this upcoming year, because remember, they don't actually profit from the sale of alcohol, but are required by state law to have a license. And so it would be actually waiving their license fee to give them that relief in this year and still allow them to provide that needed service in the few events that they'll be able to have. That is the actual proposal for today. But as Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, you also have an opportunity to look at your small business offerings that are funded through HUD. I think you've done rental relief and emergency hotel stays and things of that nature. It is our intent to bring a proposal back to you for the first meeting in January, and it would focus on adjusting some of the things that HUD allows you to do. So right now for small business, I think you've only allowed it for businesses that are 10 persons or fewer, but the actual federal definition of small business allows you to do it to up to 500 employees. Now, we're not proposing that, but if you increase that threshold, you'll be able to do a tiered approach where maybe for smaller businesses where you could serve more of them, you kept that number at 10 to 15, but then you also didn't miss the quote unquote mom and pops that might have 25 to 30 employees, but are still getting hit and need, you know, access to those funds. Right now, only about 35% of those funds have been utilized. And so making those adjustments in January would allow you to serve more businesses. And so we plan to have a conversation with the Chamber of Commerce, the Augusta Black Chamber, and others before bringing that proposal back. But I think holistically, it would really provide great support to businesses. And so again, phase one would just be addressing alcohol licenses as well as business licenses in the manner of extending and waiving the fees and then reducing the administrative fee by 15% for 2 years.
Thank you, Administrator Donald. Commissioner from the 8th.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the conversation that we're having, and thank you, Administrator, for bringing those recommendations forward as well. I had an opportunity to sit and speak with members of the Georgia Restaurant Association last week, and I heard their concerns about the struggles they've had during 2020, and also heard some recommendations that have been enacted across the state. One that was pretty intriguing actually was one in another city in the state where instead of paying the entire alcohol license up front like is normal, they're spreading it out quarterly to restaurants and businesses next year in order to help them kind of get over the hump of the COVID crisis as we enter into 21. I'm really hoping that we can come to some sort of arrangement where restaurants and alcohol licenses and those that have those will be given the relief that they are due since they were told to shut down for such an extended period this year.
Thursday, okay, bye.
Ms. Bonner, we can hear you.
Ms. Ripley.
I got it, guys. Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner from the 8th. Continue.
No, I was done. That was really all that I wanted to state was just the recommendations from the Georgia Restaurant Association, as well as what I'm hoping that we can get to help.
Okay. One of the things as we're staging this conversation, I think that there's a desire to do something today and to take some level of action today. So I do want to make sure that we are conscious of that, absent us coming back in 2021 and repeating this conversation. So as we're making notes, let's make sure everybody's calibrated that we do want to take action today. All right.
Well, can I follow that comment up, Mayor?
To do something well
about what you stated?
Sure.
I'd like to put a motion on the table.
Hold on a minute, Commissioner. All right. Okay, we're good now. Before you make that motion, can I hear from the Commissioner from the 9th who's had his hand up for a long time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Commissioner from the 9th.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, two things. First thing is, you said you want to do something today, which is our last meeting. I think this is too serious to make that decision today and hadn't vetted this thing enough. There's a lot of businesses besides the restaurants and the bars that are suffering. And Super District 10 Commission brought that point out earlier. I'm trying to figure out how we gonna make sure we do this thing fairly with everybody. We just can't say the downtown businesses. Downtown business ain't the only thing that keeps us afloat. They're very important. I support them. That's a part of my district. It's part of the super district. But I'm trying to make sure that we do this thing, and we got a bunch of new commissioners coming on I say a bunch, at least 3 coming on at the first of the year. So if we rush this thing through, rush it mean that we don't fully understand it. We vote on something. We had not vetted. What about the barber shop? You know, we had issue when you talked about the relief money was coming down before. You talk about the small businesses who had to put their name in the hats. And how about the business only got 2 people in the business? They're really struggling. I mean, you gotta, you know, and this is on our show. We gotta balance it. So I just think it's too much to make a decision today on no more conversation we having right now about just doing it for the bars. The people that drink ain't the only one that's suffering there. All of us are dealing with it. Don't even think about the churches that's involved. We all are in this together. So it's not just one size fit all. If you're gonna do that, we gotta be inclusive. My comment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Administrator Donald, let me hear from you again. All right, so members of the commission, here's our posture. I got your hand, Commissioner, from the 6th. I got your hand. We've got a lot of options that are on the table right now. And one of the challenges obviously is having an understanding of what the administrative fee is and how that's across the board for the different business entities. Much of our discussions have been focused around liquor licenses, administrative fees, but there are other businesses that don't have liquor licenses. They just simply have a business license that every year they annually are renewing those things, right? And so to that end, I believe that the administrators probably offered a recommendation that keeps the budget balanced, and not only keeps the budget balanced, but allows us to provide a sense of relief that is equitable in nature that I want him to speak to. Administrator Donald.
Yes, I think you hit that nail right on the head, Mayor. So I think the recommendation, I think that was a great recommendation by Commissioner Garrett as well, where you would almost be permanently, at least for the time period that you approve this, waiving those late fees. And so by doing it quarterly, which I believe we can do, allow folks to pay quarterly, you're essentially waiving penalties, interest, and late fees because you're allowing folks to pay at the end of that quarter. I think the other part to consider is the city of Augusta does have to have a balanced budget, and we also want to make sure we're not reducing our revenues to the point that we can't meet expenses that support those categories. And so reducing that administrative fee, you bring in about $1 million in that particular area, reducing it by 15% takes you down to that $150,000. And so that is a significant reduction for the mom and pops or the small businesses that you're referring to. But you also remember you have other supplements that you provide on the federal side, which is where I'm proposing to increase those limits. And that I would agree with the commissioner from the 9th, that if you gave us to January to expand our offerings, then you'd be able to even more strongly impact them. One example of that is by allowing all of the costs that are related to the city, whether it be the permit fees, the business licenses, construction, et cetera, to be reimbursable, you'll be able to further augment how you're impacting those small businesses. So to be able to take action today, we're holding on that recommendation until January, and today solely addressing administrative fees for permitting, quarterly support for the alcohol licenses, being able to allow them to spread those payments out over the full year, and thus you're waiving the late fees. And I don't want to leave out the Convention and Visitors Bureau, where you would simply waive their fee for 2021. But that I believe gives you the equity, because you're hitting all of the different areas, and then you would use your federal money funded by HUD to actually address those extremely small businesses that are hit the hardest. And you don't have to make that decision today, as you would need a lot more information.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna go in this order. Administrator Donald, as we're tracking, I'm looking at my clock, and my gatekeeper has left the room in terms of us trying to move these things expeditiously along, but I want to have each of those elements that we're going to adopt today. If you could get me a single sheet, because I want to make sure I've got a clear motion that involves those things for today and what we're going to be pushing off, so that everybody can make sure that they clearly understand what we're attempting to do. All right, Commissioner from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Administrator.
Yes, sir.
In terms of what you're saying about voting on those administrative fees, I want to be clear that you're suggesting that we take a vote on that today or wait till the first of the year.
Well, so the administrative fee portion for permits, as well as the quarterly payments for alcohol, you could, I'm not making the recommendation. I'm simply telling you that that's a simple enough process that you could take action on it today, because those are kind of fixed costs, kind of set service. Whereas looking at our HUD funding and the grants that you would be giving out to small business, there's not been any information provided to the commission. And so I would wait on that until January.
So, and many times in some of these budgetary items, let's say planning and zoning here, is some of that money is used as it come in to help balance your budget?
So I would say so, but I think that is why, and I've had the opportunity to talk to a few commissioners, not everyone, but you do have that balance of CARES Act funding that is available to offset any of those costs. And so we don't foresee any challenges or concerns with doing this. We'd be able to absorb that approximate $150,000 loss. And then remember, on the alcohol fees, you're not projecting a loss because you're allowing businesses to pay those funds quarterly.
Well, let me do it this way then. I'm gonna try to tie my colleagues, Commissioner Williams, Commissioner Frampton, Commissioner Garrett together.
Okay.
If you wait to January, you can address all of these, right?
Well,
because you're doing it because Commissioner Williams wanted
the HUD funding.
Excuse me for a minute. He wanted you to make sure that all businesses had an opportunity to participate on some level. I think because he said they're not the only one that holds the float on some level. That's not it may not be an absolute. To Commissioner from the 10th point, certain businesses like Walmart, for instance, they were able to just thrive in this environment, by the grace of God, So my point is, can you address all these things holistically, possibly at our first meeting in January, as opposed to piecemealing it?
Commissioner Son, the challenge with that is that you've got notices that have gone out to some businesses, and you've got deadlines that are pursuant to January 2021. So you want to provide some level of relief now and not have those businesses concerned about not only late fees and other things that could potentially happen. That's why if you go back to my original statement, Administrator Donald, give me the 3 things that we can accomplish now while waiting until 2021 to address the broader issues that speak to the more equitable challenges that you've got.
Mr. Mayor, I just say for the record, from being a small businessman in this community for years, those bills have already gone out. We should have done it in the budget time and replace that money with the CARES Act at that particular time. I'll leave it alone. Wherever we go, I'll support it.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner from the 5th.
I have one question. I guess this would be to Mr. Donald, what is the average business license fee?
Rob,
Oh, wow. I don't have.
That's probably a better question for Director Sherman to try to answer, but all businesses are not created equal. And so that number is going to be different based on business type, business size, business revenue. There are so many factors, so you're not going to get a real number.
Right. Well, here's my question. I'm not sure, and that's why I was asking, because I'm sitting here crunching the numbers. If we've got 1.4 million in CARES Act money, and we're sitting here trying to figure out percentages and what have you, my thought was if the business license was $200, $300, $500, why don't we let them come in with some kind of grant, let them apply for the $200, $300, or $500? But I'm not sure which way we want to go. But that would solve the entire problem. Just I don't know, don't have the numbers as far as what the business licenses cost. But I mean, if you just gave somebody $300, then they would just go ahead and take care of the business license and just move on. Go ahead.
Commissioner, Mayor, may I respond?
Please do, Administrator.
Yeah, so Commissioner, I think that's actually what we're proposing, just slightly different. So that's what you'd be able to do in January, and those costs, they would be able to get reimbursed from the city. That's why we're asking until January to be able to address that. But right now, today, I think what you're referring to is the administrative cost, which is about $110 per business, regardless of size. And so giving that discount today of 15%, that impacts everyone across the board. But then after those fees are done, the commission, let's say you pass it today, you come back in January, and if we look at our HUD grants or our HUD funded grants through the CDBG funds that we're looking at and changing those thresholds and what the allowable costs are, they would be able to come back in and get reimbursed for those funds and other applicable costs to the city. And so that's why I'm saying step one and step two. Step one is simply today, given the 15% reduction on those administrative costs and making it the admin fee and making it for 2 years, you're able to waive the late fees and penalties because you're allowing, at least in as far as alcohol license, it for it to be quarterly, like Commissioner Garrett recommended, and then you're extending the deadline for all business license fees anyway until 6/30. And so if you did those activities today, and I mentioned the CVB just waiving theirs completely, if you did that today, you would give immediate relief, and then you could work on the project that you just mentioned in January.
So move. Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Commissioner from the 4th State's Inquiry.
Thank you. I was going to make a motion, but I was going to do it a little bit different from what I just heard my colleagues do. I was going to ask Mr. Donald to say it, and I would adopt what he was saying. I just want to make sure we clear on what the motion is. Thank you.
Would you like me to repeat?
Voted.
The motion is what he said.
Voted.
I want to hear the motion clearly.
Mr. Bear got somewhere. Mr. Bear, you got somewhere to go?
I do.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Clark?
Yes. Hold on, I haven't heard the motion. I asked for a question for the motion.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Donald would have to repeat it.
Yes, ma'am, Michelle.
Thank you.
So what we're proposing the motion to be is to make alcohol payments quarterly payments, to extend the business license deadline to June 30th to where it is effective on July 1, waive all fees and penalties until those effective dates. For business licenses, give a reduction of 15%, which will actually be for 2 years, and then to waive the alcohol license fee for 2021 of the Convention and Visitors Bureau.
And 21 applies to the other things you mentioned when you started, correct?
Correct, yes, sir.
You didn't say it that. That's why I'm just.
I
wanting to make sure.
apologize. You're correct. Yes, sir.
Oh, man.
I'm good now.
Madam Clerk, voting.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Fenoy,
Yes.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
Madam Clerk, we're
Yes,
gonna go
sir.
to item number 42, and then it'll take us back to 28, I believe.
I think we, okay. Item 42 is discuss Muni Code implementation for Augusta, Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I want to be brief in this. In October 2017, this body approved a motion to fund and move forward with the Muni Code implementation. Muni Code is the electronic recodification of the Augusta, Georgia Code. The law department was tasked with the lead effort around that, and I'm raising this issue for now the 5th time, as it has not been completed at this point, though we started the discussion 3 years ago. What I would like to see happen, and for those who have asked on multiple occasions about Muni Code, again, it is a business tool. It allows us to, not only as elected officials, but our business community, our citizens, everyone to have access online to the current Augusta Code. It allows us not only to have access to the current Augusta Code, but as we make amendments to that code, as we add new ordinances and or new titles and sections, to have access to that online for ease of use and also as it relates to making business decisions. And so I think it's highly important for us as a city to move this project forward. Just as a matter of interest, in our region immediately adjacent to us, there are multiple cities and or counties that have done this. Columbia County currently uses Muni Code. Burke County currently uses Muni Code. I believe that our also neighbor Lincoln County uses Muni Code. And so for us in the city of Augusta, this needs to be a priority for us. We started this discussion 3 years ago, and we're not at the place of implementation yet, though we should be in my estimation. And I want to make sure that we put whatever resources are needed for us to get to that point behind this. And I know that we now can do that. The administrator comes from a city that has adopted Muni Code as well, a city that I'm certain he could certainly speak to the importance, why it's a valuable tool from a business standpoint for us to be able to get done. And so we can have some discussion. I want to hear from folks, but what I'd like to ask for is for a motion to task the administrator with providing the additional resources necessary for us to support the efforts of the Clerk of Commission and the Law Department to expedite recodification, electronic recodification of the Augusta, Georgia Code, and to do that as quickly as possible. Commissioner from the 6th.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully support with the suggestion that you just laid out there. I think per our conversation, because we spoke about this as well, do you suggest to ask the law department and as well as the clerk to give us a timeline on that? Because when we talked among ourselves around this issue when we spoke, there was a timeline and we didn't necessarily agree on that. Do you want a timeline from the principals there to try to see when there's reason to expect them to have this information for us? So you won't have to, in fairness to you, one of the things that we shared was that our attorney was not, our current general counsel was not in play at the time as a general counsel, even though he's on staff. But in fairness to you, you have asked for this as much as 3 times since he's been there. And what my point to say to you was that he's been putting out fires since he's been there. He's been in that position. So my question, straightforward, is: do you want to ask him, with all of the resources that they need, what is a reasonable timeline to expect them to have this available for us?
I think that's a reasonable question, and I'm okay with you asking that, Commissioner Fung. I know how valuable this is from a business standpoint, and I think it's time for us to put whatever people resources, human capital behind this, whether that's augmenting the clerk's office or the law department with other support personnel to be able to get that done. For those who have not had a chance to see, experience, Munico, it is a tool, once again, that I think all of us could get great value from, even as it relates to conversations that any one of us would have when you're dealing with constituent groups, when you're dealing with other entities. It's just a helpful way for us to be able to do business.
So do we ask?
You can ask your question.
Yes, sir. Mr. Attorney, Ms. Bonner, and I guess the administrator as well, if you got to get additional resources to them, what is a realistic time frame on this? Mr. Attorney?
Yes. I believe we probably should be able to complete Munich if we can work very hard at it and not be overwhelmed with any unforeseen litigation, et cetera. We should be able to move forward with Munico by the end of the first trimester, which would be April. We should hopefully have that complete. We do have a rough draft of conversion to Munico. This is the first budget that we have presently. I don't remember the exact amount. This was the first time money was committed to the law department's budget for Munico, which will start in January. I assume the budget starts in January 2021, and there is not a delay of that funding. But we would be able to hopefully complete that within 4 months, 120 days, to have something that at least something for the commission to review. But it is, I do, Mayor, in the sense that it is an important tool and it's a very convenient tool. But what's critical to me is that when it is not just copying what we have and putting it on the computer. Our statutes and our codes and our amendments are recorded in various systems. We also have the comprehensive zoning code. We have codes from other groups that would need to be incorporated in that. And Munico is attempting to eliminate any obsolete codes that we have. They are not just doing a copying job. They are seeking to form an editorial task for our code. But what we don't want to do, and what could cause us serious legal problems, if we rush and put out a code that is not accurate, we could be bound to that, and that could have significant impact in litigation. So we do want a good job, and I believe we can 120 days, and we may need other resources, but we will have to get with the administrator and try to dedicate some persons to that.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a motion that we give them 120 days to do that, starting January 1?
Second.
Who was that?
The mayor.
That was the mayor. But
I know it was an unfamiliar
Second.
I got it. Second.
Second.
I got a question. I got a question.
No, I know. I want to come back. I'm coming to you, Commissioner, from the night. Just hold on one second, though. I think because I appreciate what the attorney said, and again, I'm going to use the word the commissioner from the 6th said, and that was, quote, fairness to him or deference to him in light of the role that he's currently in. And if I were to take the words from the commissioner from the 9th, he'd probably say something like this: well, you've been in the job now over a year, so it's old hat. I say that somewhat tongue in cheek, laughingly, Attorney Brown. So don't take any negative with that. I'm just cutting up with you. But you said something that does raise some level of consternation, and that is the notion around, quote, legal challenges if our code is not right. And to suggest that says that even what we have currently from the standpoint of being able to find our code in one central location, the inability to do that raises to that level of concern as well when you talk about in multiple locations. So I think that it's extremely incumbent upon us to move as expeditiously as possible to have our code in one location so that we're able to access that code of ordinances for any and all things. Commissioner from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll come back to you, Attorney Brown.
I'm not opposed to anything I heard, but my question would be, if the clerk is the official record keeper, who's going to keep the minute code with the new codes and stuff? Is that going to be at the clerk's office? Is that going to be at the attorney's office? Is that going to be more staff? Is that going to be exactly what are we doing here now? I mean, I'm not opposed to any of this. I'm just trying to get it clear. If the clerk is the official document keeper and the documents need to be put out so people can look them up, who's going to do that? The clerk's office, who's already working short staffed it for almost 16 years. I know at least 5 to 10. So how did that work? I need an answer, somebody.
Hello?
Attorney Brown.
Okay. Our code remains the same, and the keepers of the record will, I envision, unless the commission does something different, still will remain the keepers of the record. Now, what will happen is that we will not just get our code online. Our code would be maintained by MuniCode. That is, once the commission passed an amendment to an ordinance, MuniCode will be able to come and pull that code and incorporate it in our ongoing published code online. So they don't just fix your code and put it online. They monitor it, and as you make changes, they periodically come in and to make changes. We will have an ongoing subscription with them as well. But I also wanted to add that since the public is online well, I have checked with the clerk's office. We have absolutely zero complaints about our codes or citizens having access to it. So I think a good job is being done present, but with new technology, it is certain that we upgrade, go to MuniCode. So we're working hard to do that, but we do not have a problem providing the citizens with any code that they need. We have zero complaints.
Okay, so if there's zero complaints, Mr. Mayor, and MuniCode may be a good thing, and the clerk is our official record keeper, she wouldn't give the code to MuniCode. They would come in. I mean, that's what I'm trying to understand. They would come in and go into whatever, get whatever.
Mr. Mayor, if I could,
Yes, ma'am.
To just compliment what the attorney is saying. Augusta has had a long relationship with MuniCode. Since we've had our last 2 updates, it was done by MuniCode. So MuniCode is familiar with Augusta. At this point in time, all of our ordinances, all of our amendments are accessible through our web link application right now. We have not had any complaints from anyone who was trying to search our records looking for a particular ordinance or amendment to an ordinance. We have that. I understand, as Attorney Brown said, with new technology, it gives us maybe easier access, and some of those that are really up on technology, they find it very easy and simple to use that. But as we stand right now, our records are still accessible to the public electronically. And to my knowledge, we have not gotten any complaints that no record request has not gone answered.
So Ms. Bonner, my granddad would say, if it ain't broke, why are you trying to fix it?
Well, I think what they're trying to do is give greater access technology-wise. It's easier, it's faster, it's more consolidated to where we have it now, because our code has not been updated for quite some time. And when former General Counsel Andrew McKenzie placed this on the agenda, it was his project. The clerk's office was just going to complement them to make sure that all the ordinances and amendments that had been approved by the commission was accessible, and it is, and it has been. So that was a project that former General Counsel Andrew McKenzie started. So that's my Forrest Gump moment. That's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Or in the words of Garrett Sinise, run Forrest, run Forrest. So I've shared the screen here. This is just a quick snapshot of Muni Code for Columbia County. No apparent reason other than just picking it. And like Madam Clerk just said, it's right here at your fingertips, and it allows you. This is a business tool. It is an economic development tool, economic growth tool, where at any point in time you can simply pick a chapter and click on it, and it's going to bring it all to you. It will also show you updates that will be outlined out here as well, and you can get the underlying background and all of those things simply by being able to access it. You can print it out, carry it to your meetings on Saturday or wherever, and it'll be right there as well as printed out. And it just, again, makes it extremely accessible as we continue to move forward as a city.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate that, but Columbia County is the wrong kind to bring up in my mind right now. So with anything, code or nothing else.
I understand. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Voting.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Fenoy?
Yes.
Mr. Franham?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That motion carries unanimously.
Madam Clerk, item number 44 was moved to the January meeting. So that was done, I believe, at our last meeting. And we were going to move that to the January conversation, which takes us to our final item of the day, and that is item number 25. Item number 25.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, and I'm gonna bring up something that's probably a taboo, but if I was, well, anyway. Item number 1 on our addendum agenda, and the administrator can, if he would, please address this. This is a contract that deals with our senior citizen meal program. The commission back in July approved to enter into a contract. However, the contract was never presented to the commission for approval. Therefore, Augusta has been unable to qualify for any reimbursement for this program and will not be until a contract is approved. So I'm just putting that out there. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't share with you the significance and the importance of having this contract addressed today, if we could. So I'll move to, and that's number 1 on our addendum agenda.
All right, so, and again, if I read the narrative, Madam Clerk, you indicate that this simply is an approval of the contract, but the commission approved on November the 3rd with the Recreation Department? entering into it,
resolution.
but we just didn't, they simply didn't present the contract.
Right, right. So we have no
Okay.
approved contract. So I don't know if Mr. Donald would like to add anything to that or.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head there, and it's an important part for us to, again, keep that budget balance. So we've incurred those expenditures, but we've not been able to receive reimbursement. And so if the longer that it takes, the longer we foot the bill without being able to bring those funds into our coffers. So if there is a way for us to accept this contract today, and again, you reviewed all of the documentation, but apparently the contract was not attached. And so you did not formally agree to it, although it appears that was your intent. So we could, add that stamp to it today and allow us to begin receiving reimbursement.
So Administrator Donald, you're indicating that the commission actually voted on this on the 3rd of November.
Yeah, on the 3rd, you received you didn't vote on the contract because it was not attached, and so you agreed to what I believe was the MOU or whatnot. But you have to formally approve the contract, or we cannot officially submit for reimbursement. And so if you did that, we would be able to do so.
Right, I understand. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Can we do what we did with the other funding and get 6 votes on paper and then ratified in January, Ms. Bonner?
You could, sir.
I think that's the cleanest way to do it based on, I don't think it's fair to pull one agenda item, the addendum, as opposed to the other 8 that were there, just to keep it clean.
Okay.
I mean, I think that would be the way I would want to support it and move forward, is to ratify it in January and sign it,
That's the will of the commission.
I mean, that's just my take on it.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I
Okay,
have no objection to that.
okay. Item 25 is a motion to approve SPLOS 8 list of recommended projects.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm gonna turn it over to Administrator Donald, and then I'll come back.
Administrator Donald.
Yes, sir. So Mayor and Commission, we've updated. I have included this presentation with updated numbers, et cetera, just for the edification of the public. It is on record and we can share it publicly. But Jeff, if you could actually go to the spreadsheet, it's a cleaner look and it's easier to follow. And I'll go over those to highlight them. Numbers are exactly the same and all of that good stuff, but I wanted to make it in the most palatable format. So as he brings that up, you're all aware that, and you may want to zoom in and make that piece a little bigger for everyone. I'm not sure how it is on your screens, but I'll talk through it as we go through. So for public safety, that number is at 22,445,000. It includes 7.3 million in vehicles, but we broke those down so you could see that clear allocation. That 6 million will go to the sheriff's office, 100,000 to the DA, so on and so forth. There is a specific carve out of 1.8 million for the replacement vehicles. Also, those air packs and cylinders for Augusta Fire is still there. MDT replacements for existing vehicles also still there. We have reduced the downtown vehicle security enhancements after conferring with our IT director because the technology either already exists with us or the security features cannot actually be incorporated into the city of Augusta's platform. And so the recommendation was to remove that after conferring with, and again, I'm going through, I've talked to most of you as commissioners and sent an update, but I want to make sure I'm thorough for the public's review. The RCCI new facility was reduced by $1 million because after looking at the report and presentation and conferring with Central Services, that's the number that they felt would be able to help them deliver the building as previously drafted. You can actually go to the next section which is quality of life.
Before we leave that session, can we have a comment? Or how you gonna come back? How you gonna do that?
We're gonna come back, Commissioner, from the ninth. We're gonna just let him walk through the presentation, and we're gonna take all of the questions, okay? And then we'll put up whatever page of the spreadsheet that's necessary. We'll put it up at that time.
Yes, sir. And I'm going to go through these expeditiously to make sure we're all on the same page. So if you go to next, quality of life, the total for quality of life is $65,850,000, and along with infrastructure is one of our largest categories. There is an Dias Park remains at $6 million to ensure that there is enough funding for that rebuild. In addition, we added, as directed by the commission, about $150,000 to cemeteries to bring us up to $600,000. The Fleming Park remains at $5 million. There's funding for the tennis centers at both Fleming and Newman. The Lake Olmstead Casino is at $4.5 million. Keeping with that historical preservation requirement, we also upped the different park improvement investments to $6 million. The municipal golf course in Diamond Lakes is a combined $1 million, but we simply broke it out so that you can see where those funds are going. Irrigation remains at $3 million. The James Brown Arena is also still included at $25 million. The water park is included at $5 million. Fifth Street Bridge remains at $1.75 million, as well as the $1 million for parks. We reduced administration down to $1 million. I do want to highlight, when you look at administration, this is your first time including that in parks. Not in parks, I'm sorry, in the overall SPLOST proposal. That's very important because in the past, you've actually reduced the amount for your various categories for the programs because there was not administrative funding. While these are estimates, it means that the amount that would even potentially be reduced on the programming is minimal. I think it's less than 1% of the total project we would be off. And so that's going to make sure these projects are delivered with the budget that you're seeing, which helps prevent some of the issues that you've had in the past. You can move on now to general government projects. This is one of the smaller categories, and it is not because we reduced it. We just aligned, and I'll highlight that later. We just aligned the appropriate projects, let's say under economic development or wherever they're supposed to be. I think the $16.5 million for the cyber parking deck was listed under here previously. Since that was associated with economic development, it's just listed there. So didn't want to alarm you, it's not reduced. These categories actually remain the same. And the final comment I have on general government projects is at this $4 million, we'll be able to, you'll be able to bond certain projects. And so on that spreadsheet that I originally gave you, it had a special call meeting for December 15th. I would ask that the commission keep that date because then you can decide what projects you want to bond. You can go to the next piece, which is infrastructure. Under infrastructure, I'll just highlight a few of these. I'll actually just highlight Walton Way. The others pretty much remain the same, or these are projects the commission directed me to work closely with Director Malik to make sure that all of the projects that have been deemed priority by the commission were included. We actually spent quite a bit of time doing so, and this includes all of those. And we actually added Walton Way, and it is $1 million, but while it is less than what we previously identified in the $7 million, Walton Way is a project that is on our federal and state list. And so the director, as well as myself, are extremely confident that we will be able to bring that project online using those federal and state funds. But it will require our $1 million in seed money. And so the commissioners who've had a heightened interest on that project, we've had a conversation offline about it and explained it in great detail, but just for the edification of the public, we wanted to make sure that they understood that this project is still included. It also still keeps those East Augusta projects, including the underfunded projects from 4 and 5, as well as beginning project 6 or phases 6 and 7. So those are also included. Again, the total for infrastructure, which is our largest category and one that, you know, requires the most attention, is at $78,500,000. If you go on to government facilities, in this area, we did make some adjustments, but those were inclusionary. Thank you to both Commissioner Sias, also Commissioner Frampton, and I believe Commissioner Garrett. We also had some specific conversations about this area around facility maintenance, making sure that Craig Halton was included in that, but we also pulled out for clarity for the Board of Elections. I know that I had an opportunity to speak with the mayor and others about that one, where $500,000 is identified to be able to deliver the storage for their much needed equipment and improvements there. And so we've also been able to speak with the executive director, who was quite pleased with that inclusion. It also includes that carve out for fire stations, as well as making sure that that fleet maintenance facility is included as well. And so that's $19 million. Economic development is next. And again, this looks like an increase, but it is not. As you'll see, what we did under economic development was to the depot project remains at $14 million. You've all received a presentation related to that. And so we kept those costs the same to make sure that we could meet it. We also met with the Augusta Economic Development Authority related to retail recruitment and industrial recruitment and site preparation. While I've broken this out for 10 million and 2 million because the total that they needed is 12, I would ask the commission or to note that the expectation is that we are allocating 12 million, which would allow the flexibility to where if they needed to increase one or lower the other based on implementation, they would have that flexibility. The number that is reduced is blight mitigation, but I did want to assure you that it is not based on service. It's only based on the rules of SPLOST. Again, I think I mentioned that, you know, we've talked to some of the largest foundations in the country who have an interest in supporting blight mitigation, as well as our partners at HUD, and that will help us address the tearing down of buildings. But the balance of that and what you can use SPLOST dollars for is actually the purchase or the putting a structure and revamping a blighted piece of property. And so I wanted to make sure that you understood that that's not necessarily a reduction. It's just a better allocation to align with the rules of SPLOST. And then we would use those other dollars for that tearing down and some of the other pieces of that blight mitigation. And so in short, that's the overview of economic development. And so that moving the cyber center parking deck is what has made that number look so large, because it was previously under another area. And then finally, we have the other government allocation, which again, you've approved the IGA, which is $7.5 million for Hephzibah and $1.5 million for Blythe, which again, Mayor Davis and I were able to have those meetings with those two mayors, and of course have gone over it in detail with the commission. And so I'll entertain any questions that you have, because that concludes my overview.
Thank you, Administrator Donald. I know that we've got a lot of questions. Yeah, Commissioner from the 9th.
Thank you, sir. I gotta slow it down, Mr. Mayor, because I got a lot of questions. First of all, I want to know when the meeting took place with the commissioner to decide any of this stuff. I mean, I'm looking at, I think I missed that meeting. When was that meeting held?
To discuss which items for the Helpsiva and the Blythe allocations during the last presentation. I mentioned what's called the mayor's meeting, where those conversations were held and made the recommendation to increase from 7.5 to increase to 7.5 and 1.5 million. So that was in the previous presentation.
Okay,
let me mention something as well, Commissioner. That's a stand-up meeting, which we have
okay, I'm not worried about that.
Get into the IGA. So
I'm not worried about the IGA. I'm not worried about that. I'm talking about any of this as an elected official, as the one who's going to put a proposal together to do something for the SPLOST. I thought this body as a whole would meet and discuss something. I understand administrator and previous administrator did the same thing, but Mr. O'Donnell is doing here now. He's doing nothing wrong. But just go back to Dyers Park.
Yes, sir.
Dyers Park, he got $6 million in for Dyers Park. I'm in support of Dyers Park, but Dyers Park is not big enough to really do anything with the fire station that it sits on. The property there, it's already been consumed. What are we gonna do with $6 million with a facility that's too small to cut a cat out in? It's really, what would the $6 million do? We need to move Dyers Park across the street, down the road, around the corner, but we hadn't had this conversation. That's one thing. The other thing is the JBA, the 25. How much money you say you got for the JBA?
25 million.
25 million. And remember that now these I actually included in the memorandum that I sent to the council, the commission a couple of weeks ago and discussed. So the 25 million is the city's contribution, but it would require a GO bond or for the balance to be bonded. That project, I think when I highlighted in the last meeting, it's about a $250 million project. And so the $25 million is the city's contribution to the overall cost of the facility. And then the Coliseum Authority would actually bond that overall project.
Ms. O'Donnell, you explained the process, and I get that. I done did 16 of them if I ain't did more. But I get that. I'm talking about when have this body sit down and agreed to the 25 million? Have this body, I mean, that's a number was put out there to us, but we hadn't talked about it.
Oh, I understand. I understand what your question.
Yeah, that's my question. Even the road construction, the road resurfacing with 23.5. I know some commission wanted to do road construction, and I'm not against that, but I don't think we spending the money in the for the sales tax for everybody that gets them. Everybody ain't telling on the road out there at one point. I want to know when these conversations have been held to decide all this stuff. The fire department got $1 million there for the fire department. What's their budget now? What do they have already in the fire department budget? Because that's totally different. That's totally different from anything else, right?
It is. And I can give you some insights on those questions as we go through them. So I think the first part is that these are just recommendations. And so I think the expectation is during discussion, the council, the commission, I apologize, I come from a council manager organization, but the commission would review these recommendations and give comments. In the last meeting, the commission gave some directions on where to make adjustments from the first recommendation. And so during that time, I'll give you just a couple of examples. When it came to infrastructure, there was about I'm thinking off the top of my head, about 5 commissioners that made comment that while it's a great stab at it, and I think the 64.5 million that we had allocated was a good start, there needed to be some adjustment on these projects. And so I talked to each of those commissioners individually, as well as any others that reached out, but went directly to the department head that they had questions about so that we can adjust the infrastructure recommendation. So if there was a commissioner who mentioned road construction, I gave them a personal call and we talked through it, and we talked through really the whole budget and got their blessing to update this number to present to the full commission so that you can discuss it. And so I want to make clear that today's presentation, at least from my perspective, is this is the administrator's recommendation, but the council should agree or not that these recommendations fit your collective vision and that the adjustments make sense. And then if they do, you would pass it. If they do not, then you would give us whatever direction you feel appropriate. We will adjust it and get it until you feel that it is right. So this is just version.
I get that, Mr. Administrator, and I think you're doing a good job with what you're doing. Please don't take this personal.
No,
I don't think.
No.
I tried to keep it with the list, and I made a list of stuff. Even when we talked about the water park, what will $5 million do for a real water park? Now, if we're gonna build a park, we need to build a real water park, but we spending money, and we trying to attract revenue into our city. We got to spend it wide. We can't just fix the roads. If you ain't got nobody coming in your city to spend money, then they're not gonna spend the money for you to have the money to continue to work on the road. We got to do first thing first. We can't get the road ready and there's no reason to come here. There's no reason nobody gonna travel on the roads. So that was my question about putting that 23.5 on the road. I'm talking about I'm trying to get us to understand about economic development. We've been talking about every time something come up, going to another county or to another state, across the bridge, South Carolina, we get excited, but we're not doing anything. This community is not getting anything. This community, like Dyess Park, I support Dyess Park, but $6 million. I mean, we putting 23 million in 5 in the road, but we're gonna put 6 million in a facility been run down for 2,000 years. So that tells me that we're not thinking too smart on these things. We got to go back and look at this list again. We as elected officials need to talk and then come up with something. But where's the economics part of this thing? If it wasn't by our sales tax, we'll fall down on our face. So we need the sales tax. I get that. But I don't see it being spread on this community like it ought to be spread. It's going the same thing, road construction, other folks making money off of the same stuff, paving the same road, and we're not getting anywhere. We got to do something to draw people into our city. I'm for a water park, but we want to build a real water park and not a pond. We want to build a park where people would travel to.
I'll defer on 90% of that because I think you're right. The commission has to have the discussion, but I would like to just point out, because you made a great point. If you have roads and nowhere to go, then it's a waste of time. But I'll use the water park as an example, and my unique experience being one of the higher ranking people in the Georgia Department of Economic Development and overseeing all economic development for the District of Columbia. When I look at the allocation for the water park, I don't believe that the city should be the only one putting funds in for that. When you think of those type of projects, those are P3s. And so as your administrator, what my plan would be for that $5 million for the water park is to release a request for information nationwide for people who would have an interest in bringing or actually partnering with the city to deliver that in Augusta, Richmond County, and the city seed money to deliver that project would be $5 million. And then our partner would come to the table and help deliver the rest so that it would be world-class. Examples of that in the District of Columbia, when you look at what we did for the Audi soccer stadium, where we even sold part of the naming rights in that development, as well as other areas, whether it be our quality of life activities, but even our park system, we use that model to deliver projects. And so I'm fully confident that the economic development projects that the commission would be proposing, including in this, that as your administrator, we'd be able to deliver them. And with that, I would defer, because I think you're right on target with those concerns.
The constituency that I've been talking to about our sales tax is really opposed to the sales tax because they don't see what you see, Mr. Donald. I get that because they're not administrative, but they don't see the growth or the wealth or the economic dollars coming into but one side, but one area. For instance, I just mentioned, the mayor mentioned that we approved that the James Brown trail would run around 9th and 8th Street. And
Yes,
it's
sir.
bare as a desert there now. You're talking about a food desert. Even the birds don't like down there no more. When everything else was thriving in that area, the sales tax ain't got nothing in it for that. Zero. That's a dying area, and it's the heart of our city. When we talk about Lane and Walker, we talk about rooftop. There's nothing going on. Nobody even talked about nothing to be put in that area. And that's not a 1 block area. That's about a 10 block area from Lane and Walker down to Reynolds Street. I mean, it's two blocks down and 10 blocks across. So it bothers me as an elected official when I don't see the economic empowerment that could be put there. We're talking about the sheriff department getting the money for the cars that we trade before they get 100,000 miles on them. And that's not your problem. That's what the commission did. Instead of us changing that, we get rid of cars. With less than 100,000 miles, we trade them in. We sell them. The people use it to make taxi cabs out of them. So there's some things need to happen, Mr. O'Donnell, and I'm sorry to bring it like this, but I can't support none of that. None of that. I mean, I just don't see it. I don't understand it.
Yes, sir. Understood.
Okay. I don't see the mayor. Is he back?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Commissioner from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to piggyback on what the commissioner from the 9th has stated, that, I'm not going to apologize for saying this, but it seems like certain people get together and make decisions, and they're just etched in stone, and everybody else has got to swallow it like bitter medicine. Well, I'm not going to swallow it like bitter medicine. The commissioner from the 9th was talking about economic development. And what have we got? We don't have anything. And, I'm for, I would say, 70% of what we've got on this splashed package. But when you're leaving out economic development, you're wanting to leave out, the hearts, and Mr. Rant just came before us and we passed something that we vitally need downstairs, and that's the art trail. But, I bring up a museum piece. Nancy Glazier brings up a museum piece, and everybody, oh no, we're not giving a dime to that this time, not a dime to that thing. Well, that's well and good, but you're going to put, $23 million into road paving. You're going to put another $20 million into drainage and irrigation or whatever. You're duplicating of services, and you go right down this list and you see that we're duplicating services of monies that we've already getting from other avenues, but we're not putting enough money into economic development to bring business and to bring tourists into this town. And when you've got people, business owners, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, when you've got the entities in this city thinking that, yes, we need a museum piece, we need more things for people to come do, and then you just totally ignore it and say, oh, hell no, we're not going to have that, then I'm going to have to side with the commissioner from the 9th. I cannot support this as it's put out there right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner from the 10th. I'm going to mention something that we've had an opportunity to look back at over the last several days and really look at it from a broader perspective. And I go back to my statement about Augusta and holistically looking at it. I do think that what the administrator has recommended gets us a little closer to where we ultimately want to be. But when I look at the issues of quality of life, and we see Augusta as a city, a destination city where people from all across the nation want to come, a city of opportunity where people want to live, to learn, to work, and to raise their families. If we look at just cyber alone, people are coming from very progressive communities. The Lincoln Center, Holocaust Museum, just a host of options, the Smithsonian Museum of African American History, and the Smithsonian Museum of Native American History, and all of these places. When you look at the community that we live in, I do think it's important for us to pause for a moment long enough to just really be thoughtful about this opportunity that we have in looking at the city of Augusta. When I look at museums in the broader context, they quite frankly are a driving force for tourism. And as Augusta moves towards being a destination, we just had Benish Brown on just a moment ago, who gave us an update about the International Soul Festival and those things. And so we have to look at tourism, arts, and museums as anchors for tourist development. Museums, they have a way of showcasing the best of a community's history and culture to the widest possible audiences. And they are, in fact, economic drivers. When you look at what museums do globally, when we look at what they do globally, and certainly here in America, according to the Indiana Historical Society and the magazine entitled The Economic Impact of Museums, like most nonprofit organizations, what we've been told is that there's data that supports that museums support more than 726,000 jobs, which is enough to employ a former city that our administrator was employed at, and that's the Washington, D.C. 726,000 jobs. So I do believe that it's important for us to give strong consideration. I know we've had a number of entities that have asked for support. Museums and other nonprofit cultural organizations, they return more than $5 in tax revenue for every $1 they receive in funding from all levels of government. And so you've got, when you look at museums, large and small, that are constantly using funds to maintain buildings, host events for the community, and create new exhibits, the result is a contribution of over $50 billion to the American gross domestic product here in our communities. And so I just want to put that out there as we are advocating for what ultimately will be our SPLOST state list. And with that, I'm going to go to, in this order, I'm going to go to the commissioner from the 8th, the 1st, and then back to the mayor pro tem.
Thank you, Mayor.
I've had my hand up, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'm sorry. I do apologize.
All right, we good? As far as discussion goes, I don't have a lot of more to add to the ongoing conversation that we've had about this for the last few months. So I make a motion to approve the SPLOST list as presented.
I'll second it.
All right, very well. Okay, I'm going to the commissioner from the 1st.
You muted.
Commissioner from the 1st.
Yeah.
Okay, it's on you.
Okay, yes. I don't totally disagree with what you just presented to us, Mr. Mayor, but we have people that have lived downtown for years, and they hate to see the rain come because of the flooding that will follow the rain. Now, the engineering department has done a great job in taking care of some of these issues, but the issues have not completely been resolved. And if you talk to them about a museum or getting the pipes and drainage fixed so that their homes will stop flooding, they're gonna go with the infrastructure. Again, if someone rides up and down Laney Walker and they want a thrill ride, the speed limit is about 25, but go 30 miles an hour and see how you gotta fasten your seatbelt, because if you don't, you'll be thrown out your vehicle. You ride up 12th Street. If you ride up 12th Street and you see all the repairs that have been done and all the dips in the road, something needs to be done about that. And earlier when we talked about discrimination, you know, I mentioned discrimination based on zip codes. Again, the district that I represent is probably the oldest part of the city. It's been here since the beginning of time, and we have had our wear and tear, but we have not had the necessary improvements to bring it up to par. So I like the idea of taking a structure down and replacing it with another structure. But I also like the idea of repairing our streets, bringing the quality of life up for the people that live in District 1 and District 2. Get rid of some of these raggedy houses. Put houses back on some of these vacant lots that we have. And so I don't totally disagree with the proposals, but I like the idea of coming back on the 15th with a final cut on the splash projects.
All right, going to the commissioner from the 5th, and then I'm close out with you, Mayor Pro Tem. Commissioner from the 5th.
No, I was just gonna make the motion to approve. I think we need to understand that there's only so much money. And I know I've got some calls about NGOs. If we put one in, we have to put another one in. So we just need to make a decision based on what we have. I'd like to move forward. Thank you.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to say thank you to Administrator Donald and all the department heads for putting all this together. I think it's a great package. I think when you look at the different entities that we hit, from a quality of life to structural needs aspect, I think it's just a good package, and I'm ready to move forward.
All right, voting. Madam Clerk, voting.
I know.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Mr. Clark? He out? Okay. Ms. Davis?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Fenoy?
Yes, Ms. Bonner. Rough yes for me.
Nevertheless, it's a yes. Mr. Trenum?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett?
I think Commissioner Clark is back.
Are you voting, sir, Mr. Clark?
I vote no.
Okay. Mr. Garrett?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sayers?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams? You're muted, Mr. Marion Williams.
Big no, ma'am.
That motion carries with Mr. Clark, Mr. Dennis Williams, and Mr. Marion Williams voting no.
Administrator Donald, you mentioned about the 15, no, I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, I will give you a chance to finish your statement.
I'm done. I published the vote.
Okay. Administrator Donald, you mentioned about our timeline and going back to the 15 December date. While I think it's important for us to talk about what our spend plan is, I don't think it's necessary for us to have to do that on 15 December. We certainly have time. What is critical path is that you've adopted a SPLOST package. Now, this can in fact be provided to the Board of Elections for presentation in the local daily organ. As it relates to a spend plan, we can effectuate that in 2021 in terms of what the projects are that we want to begin bonding first. So that's just an aside. Right now, we need to have the attorney review the IGA as to form, and we'll then need to make sure that we coordinate with general counsels for each of the municipalities, Blythe and Hepzibah, working in concert with our staff and council here. And once we've done that, then we can begin putting together a package to transmit to the Board of Elections. All right, Commissioner. Hold on a minute. Hold on a second. Commissioner from the 6th.
No, so Mr. Mayor, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of what I was going to say, and I was going to ask. But so what you address that.
Thank you, sir. All right, Commissioner from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Point of personal privilege.
Yes,
I don't support the SPLOST like that, and I think it's wrong. I just hope the taxpayers understand that the commission did do their job and tried to do what is best for this city. I'm going to advocate against it the best I can. I'm going to tell the world not to support the SPLOST. I hate to put it that way, but I think we're being unfair to the citizens of Augusta, Richmond County. All of these SPLOSTs we done had and got no more we got going on now. We're not doing the job the people elected us to do. So that's my point.
Thank you. Commissioner from the 4th. We're gonna give him a minute to come back. He hit the wrong button. Commissioner from the 4th.
Thank you, sir. A couple of things. I was a little concerned about the word spend. I really think it's our mission to go out and advocate to the citizens what we believe is in this project. Majority had voted for the project, and we should support it. That's one of the reasons why we were elected, get everything the way you want it. But I'm just concerned about the word spend. I think that's everything about this project has a great benefit to this city. And if you, and not only do you need business to be in the ride on good roads per se, you need the citizens to be up here every day in and day out, going to work, going to this, traveling. They need decent roads and things to ride on. And I appreciate what Commissioner Fenoy said about certain areas. And that's the whole purpose of the resurfacing. We go out and find these streets, particularly these arterial streets that has these defects, and we can get them fixed. So I appreciate the support for that. So I look forward to us having a truthful, spirited conversation with our citizens and get this packet approved. Thank you.
All right. All right, Madam Clerk, I don't believe that there's any additional business before us today.
That's right.
All right, I'm extremely ecstatic about that. To our outgoing commissioners, the commissioner from the 3rd, the commissioner from the 9th, and the commissioner from the 1st. I believe the commissioner from the 1st would say it this way: it's been real. The commissioner from the 9th will probably say it this way: the horse has left the barn and you can't bring him back. And the lady from the 3rd will probably say it this way: thank y'all. I've enjoyed serving with everybody. I look forward to seeing you in the community. And with that, we'll call this meeting adjourned. Mr. First, he got his hand up. He want to go one more again.
Yeah. Only thing I would say, Mr. Baird, I don't like the idea you misquoting me, but what I would say is the tree don't fall too far from the apple.
Touche.
See y'all in 2021. Happy holidays.
All right.
And y'all.
Everybody take care.
Happy